Thank you. Okay, we're just past the 5 o'clock hour. We have a couple work sessions before our regular meeting. Let's kick it off. Work session for council members, CIP survey results. And I'll turn it over. I think tonight I was thinking let's let administration give a presentation on the survey results. Then we'll come to council for comments, and then we'll go to, I don't know if administration wants to throw department heads first or second, and then if there's public, we'll look for public comments too. All right, so I'll start it off with administration.
Awesome. I guess just to kick it off, just to welcome again, Jeanette Bauer is with us. We're very excited to have her on board, and I will say too, it's very nice to see everybody's faces and have you guys up all at the dais and moving forward on a beautiful, what feels like summer day. I kept telling Jeanette all day that it's always like this in Seward, and I don't think she believed a word I said, but nonetheless.
It's been nice every time I've come here, so I believe it.
Yeah. So I guess just to kick it off, as far as our time during the next hour, the goal would be to just go over the results of the survey that council was provided recently, and also in your packet is a copy of the identical survey that was sent out to our department heads. So the goal is to go over both the council filled out survey and the administrative filled out survey. Later on during the regular council meeting, we'll be scheduling a 2-hour work session for next month to continue this conversation. This is just the start of what's going to be a long process, and it's timely as we move forward into budget season as well. So again, this is just to start talking about CIP. You know, we've thankfully marked off a lot of the CIP lists from the old project list, and we're just looking forward to continuing on into our next 2-year budget. And really, as far as our time tonight, administration would like to hear from council, from each of you guys, on where you're at, as well as any public comments, so that we can move forward with identifying those projects which this body would like to move forward in the coming years. So I think we'll hop right into the PowerPoint. Just a hats off. Dustin is not in the audience tonight, but he put this PowerPoint together. Should be pretty quick and fairly easy to read, and just provide a high-level overview of the results of the survey that you guys all completed. So as far as the CIP priorities survey, so administration asked council members to rank their own individual capital improvement plan projects, and that was delineated by each fund. So we had general fund and then each of the enterprise funds, and do so in a priority ranking. The results presented showed the highest ranked projects from each of the funds. So again, this is just a snapshot, and I can send you guys the detailed breakdown after the fact. Results are based off of those surveys that were completed and received by 510. Complete survey results and comments can be found in your council packet, and so that the public can see that as well. The first question on the survey was in regards to whether council is in favor of the current proposal by the administration for moving forward with the animal shelter. So that RFP is open. Jackie's on vacation right now, but she told me on Friday that we've had over a dozen respondents request the packet already. So we are, in all likelihood, going to be getting a number of quality bids as we move forward with that project. But the first question on the CIP survey was asking members whether they're in favor of moving forward with the animal shelter as it currently stands, and that's based off of that most recent work session that we had.
Can I ask just a real
Go
quick?
ahead.
This is based on 5 responses?
Correct.
Of the 7 of us?
Correct. In terms of general fund top priorities, and this is just the #1 priority that council members ranked, the animal shelter received the most votes, obviously over 50%. Campgrounds, adding additional utility sites, received 1 response, and relocation of the public workshop also received 1 response. In terms of the electric fund, Fort Raymond substation fencing received 60%. Seward Marine Terminal electrical upgrades for the cruise ship dock received 20%, and T-line replacement for Nash Road received 20% as well. In terms of public works on the water side, the largest item that was noted was replacing the Laurel Canyon 200,000 gallon tank with a 500,000 gallon tank. New water meter program with auto read meters, gateway tank roof, and the distribution piping upgrades all received one response. In terms of wastewater, the largest item was the lagoon sludge removal at 60%, followed by replacing the infrastructure that's past its utility life at 20%, and SMIC lower lift station construction at 20%. Switching over to the harbor, this is really timely. The northeast boat launch ramp that Norm's been keeping you guys up to date on received 60%, followed by replacing K&L at 20% and replacing the anodes on the floats at 20%. For SMIC, it was pretty evenly distributed, one response each for the North Dock paving, paving the city-owned boatyard, additional power stalls, improving drainage and fence storage, and then addition of more fire hydrants over at SMIC. All right, so that is the results of council survey. Does council have any questions on that? No, it's pretty basic. All right. Brenda, can we pull up that other? Oh, okay, here we go. So this is also in your packet and provides a little bit more of a granular level view, just so you can see the comments that were noted by council when you guys filled out the survey. And then we should have one more attachment.
It's,
Oh, that one, okay.
I think it might be on the tab, or it is not. Okay, is it in a different program?
I think this is it. Yep,
PowerPoint?
this is it. This is it. I just gotta figure out how to zoom in. So, administration also sent out the same survey that you guys all received. And we asked each of our department heads to fill out the same survey. And it was a good opportunity for us as staff just to go back and look at our CIP list internally and also just allow everybody to kind of weigh in. I guess the biggest takeaway that I want council to see from here was both on the survey that you all filled out as well as on the survey that the department heads fill out. You see the animal shelter in terms of the #1 priority. That was ranked by 1, 2, 3, let me scroll over, 4. It was definitely the highest noted item in terms of a priority ranking. So the biggest takeaway for us at this point is that we're moving forward with the animal shelter, and that's supported both by this body as well as the thoughts and opinions of our own internal staff. Any questions? No? So I guess as far as how we use the remainder of this work session time, we'd like to have each council member, after you guys have had a chance to go back and look at the CIP list, to each of you guys to provide us just your general thoughts on each of the items, especially for the general fund, and have a preliminary conversation about where you would like administration to proceed as we move into budget season with developing a prioritized capital improvement plan list.
Okay. Is there anyone on the dais that wants to kick it off?
Oh, go ahead.
I'll start, I guess. First off, thanks for getting this together for us to go through. Secondly, the general fund I thought was kind of spot on in my view. The animal shelter, I think we put so much money into it already, I believe, that I think it's a good idea that we should probably just finish it. And I think the list pretty much, I didn't see anything blaringly goofy or weird about it. It just seemed like it made sense to me, so as far as the general fund.
Well, I think that's a good way to kick it off. Let's go fund by fund instead of taking bigger bites on each. Any other comments on the general fund? Cheryl?
Yes, I would like to see also the animal shelter as number one, which we've decided, I guess it is. And the next one is I'd like to see the public works moved out, and then we can put this property up for sale in town here. And those are kind of my two major ones that, seeing I didn't fill it out, that's what I would have put.
Okay. Councilor Under?
If administration or maybe the mayor can expand a little bit more on the Low Point Tunnel, exactly, our role in what, like, what are we looking at dollar-wise, or what's the project at this point?
So I'll turn it over to Doug real quick, but I guess in short,
And what's the match?
so we've already paid our match. The project at this point has been approved by the Corps. We're just waiting on Congress to fund the project, but in terms of city participation, Doug's done an awesome job working with our local, or the Alaska Army Corps of Engineers, and at this point, we're just waiting on Congress to fund the project. Doug, you wanna?
Sure. The only thing that I can see a cost as far as the city would be if down at the tunnel outlet, if we had to move electric lines, that's our cost. If we had to move a water sewer line, that was part that would be under our end of it. But other than that, the main project, the latest that just came in, that it passed the director to the next director for the Army Corps of Engineers and on through the Secretary of the Army, it's they listed it at $185 million on this project right now. It was 122 is what I had always been kind of looked at. The latest was 185, and it passed through. There's one more step to pass before it goes for the funding for Congress, but they did ask already for the 40,000 that we supported, or the 4 million that we supported for them to get started doing design, final design stuff on it. So they're moving ahead with it. Cost-wise for us, our biggest thing, like I said, would be if there's some sort of utility move or something. We own, or the state does the land, most of the land for it. It's just a matter of us, our lobby costs for our lobbyists, and all of us as far as we work through with our delegation, whenever we have that chance to talk to them, to support that. I mean, it's a huge life safety project for us, for here in Seward, and the old tunnel's 80 years old now, 81 years old, and more repairs are probably coming. Ideally, with that tunnel, it'll be left in place and put a little shelter on the entrance, a little rooftop, and it'll be kept for doing, so we cut down one and do maintenance on the other. So it's,
Did you have a comment?
No, I think you answered my question, thank you.
Go ahead.
So, I hear financially, we're set. Lobby-wise, we may need to inject more energy, whether it's time or money, as a body, just working together. There's no more cost, is that, other than these surprises that could come up?
right, those are the only things that I see ahead. The big thing, I think, is continuity now, having the city manager, we've got city and assistant, and keeping that. We need to push that a little bit more, I think, with our Congress, because we've jumped through different contacts. So hopefully we can get that all back in.
So, I remember years ago working on legislative language that was helping guarantee that we didn't have to take ownership, or that can was kicked down the road. Is that part all taken care of? Now we're just looking at the repairs.
I think that's on our federal priority list under lobbying, that language. We need to keep steady on that.
Okay.
So there's currently, the verbiage in there is that there's a 5-year extension on when the city takes over
But we can't
O&M. But
bear the cost of the O&M.
well, and the problem is that even that keeps getting kicked down the road, and so that's something that we're going to need to, once the project actually gets the green light to move forward, that we're going to need to engage with our lobbyists more on. But it's definitely something that's been discussed. Norm and I have been having bi-weekly calls with our state lobbyist, and we've also been in contact with our federal lobbyist about that as well.
Go ahead.
So, I'm the other person that didn't fill out the survey, and so if we're talking general fund, I'd like to see the Low Point Tunnel as our number one priority, just because it has been for so long. My number two would be the Public Works, and I put the animal shelter as 3, just because there's already the momentum it's gonna happen in the next part of moving Public Works. So if it's that close. But I really want to keep the momentum on that Low Point Tunnel in all ways, legislatively, MOA and all
Yeah,
that.
thanks, Doug.
Thank you, Doug.
Yeah, and I think it's just, it's funny, the ratings are just a little different. Those are my top 3, because I think we can do a few things on the same level, because for me, always, I know I put animal shelter first, but I think that's just because that's a low-hanging fruit. But I think we should always verbalize to all our lobbyists that Low Tunnel is like our key priority. Go ahead.
Just something to add, and that was something we talked about in staff just a little bit as we kicked through this second one, was maybe just to have it always just listed at the top there, and then same with animal shelter. Rather than vote on it as you're going through projects, we already have those 2, you list them on the top. We list the Gold Canyon as our number 1. Animal shelter, unless something's changed, it's pretty much, it's in the RFP stage right now. We vote against it or put it against other projects. So those were the 2 that we kind of looked at, just not as worried as much about as far as priority.
So I see a few rising to the top. I'll look at Councilmember DeMoss. Did you want to make some comments?
No, I guess I would just, reiterate with what I already put in, the survey, which was animal shelter because it's already gaining momentum. I feel strongly about moving Public Works because I just feel like we could sell that land and it's just so valuable and it would look really nice, especially if we can do it at the same time with the animal shelter land. So.
I'll go to Councilmember McClure.
Yeah, animal shelter for me, obviously, but I wanted to ask a couple questions. The Lagoon Boardwalk rebuild, that appeared on the list, and I guess that passed me by when we put it on the list, but is there like serious talk about doing that, and has there been a price fixed to that?
So 2
Because
things.
it's a good thing.
It is on the list. I would say that, and I apologize, I didn't bring my budget book with me, but just with the cost of building materials, the cost that's listed in your budget book is probably
Not even close.
half of what it, I want to say it was $200,000, 240, 240.
So now,
I mean, Norm just got a response back on the cost of the Northeast launch ramp, and just the lumber costs alone pretty much doubled. So you're probably looking 500,000.
So the follow-up to that is, several years ago when Jim Hunt was city manager, he actually had it closed off because he felt it was dangerous. So has there been any assessment of any level of danger on the boardwalk that would require something urgent?
I think I can answer that. They repaired, there were some damages to it.
Well, there was that when
They
the car
repaired
hit
those
it.
damages and they are up. Tyler can be more of a, they've been keeping track of everything fair and everything seems to be fine, I believe, but Tyler can. I know the repairs were made to make it safe.
Right, okay, that's what I wanted to hear. So then, yeah, I would move that, I mean, keep it on the list, but it's obviously, I was thinking it was low-hanging fruit, but it's obviously, I didn't think of the cost of numbers, so, yeah. And then the other question I had, the heat loop project, we've sort of set aside because, a while back, we set it aside because of the low cost of fuel oil. And so, and that didn't rise to the surface much, well, I don't know, it was sort of in the middle there, but is that a realistic thing to keep on our list and continue to talk about if we're not really going to do it? I'm just throwing the question out. Nice.
Madam Mayor, we just applied for another part of the grant with the help of Daryl here and working within that. And we applied for another grant for that project. Don't know where it's at, but we just applied for it. So it's still on, it's still there. We get some grant money.
Then my third question, we're talking about, well, we'll figure out how to finance the animal shelter, but the relocation of Public Works, I'm convinced, okay, we can go do it, but how do we do it? Do we discuss at some point, maybe during that 2-hour work session, the potential of what are we gonna do, bond for it? So I mean, we're gonna have to, there's upfront cost before we can sell lots to amortize the costs, so we need to I mean, we can keep it on there, it's pie in the sky still until we come up with some way of funding it, so. But I'd like to keep that on there, so. Those were my questions.
And I think to that third point that you made, the biggest thing we're trying to accomplish, like I opened up with, is just getting some conversation and some consensus on what our priorities are. And we can be innovative and figure out a path forward to making those happen. When that happens, you know, that's a different question, how we pay for it. There's other ways of going about that. But I think the biggest thing is just figuring out, what does this body want to do? You know, what are your priorities? And we'll, you know, we can come back to you and provide some solutions and some options for a path forward. But I think the first step is just getting some consensus on what do we want to have happen.
Vice Mayor, did you want to provide comments? Okay. Do you have enough comments?
Just a comment based on that, to put things in priority of 1 through 7 can be challenging just because, for example, if you were to add additional RV hookups on the waterfront, we've seen how much our RV revenues have increased just alone with increasing the rates to something competitive. And it sounds like they're filling up. You know, if you were to do that first, then can you take those revenues and focus towards a recreation center? So to say we want a recreation center before we come up with a revenue stream is, you know, so I think that's kind of why we're here, right? Is I feel more comfortable setting priorities based on our revenue streams, based on a wish list. So.
Well, and I might say it was somewhat hard for me to have dual paths of, there's things that we absolutely need to repair to keep things going.
Right.
And then there's things that we want to do to move forward. So it's that balance too, so I'm glad we're having the discussion. Well, let's move on, if we're fine with moving on to the next one is the electrical fund. Did that give you enough direction with the first go-round?
So I guess just in general, my takeaway that I got from that was that in general, council would like us to move forward for sure with the animal shelter. That's in play right now. We're moving down the road, and the public workshop is generally the second item that you would like us to move forward with.
And I think overarching is, I think we can all agree that that little tunnel
Right.
needs to have
Yes.
a lot of force behind it.
Yeah.
And we'll, you know, I don't know if now, maybe we'll break for public, I'm sorry to call you, maybe what we'll do is, Daryl, did you want to go now or wait till the end? What's your preference?
Well, I don't know that I need to go at all. But
Oh, if you have comments.
I mean, I would encourage you to always try to take advantage of grant funds.
Yeah.
Wherever they either have it in hand or they're real likely cost funds. And keep that out in the forefront. And not lose track of the fact that you already have some grant money for things. Take advantage of it. Use your whatever limited cash resources you have to make those things move forward. And that's all I'm going to say on that, because I think you all know where I feel about certain things. I guess the other thing is, well, when you're talking about electric here, I don't know what happened to getting the rest of the T line conducted using 115K. So I don't see that in your
Yes, to the
pie chart at all.
115K, the step
It's-
down.
Now, we've got two projects, major
Can you-
infrastructure projects.
Yeah, could you flesh that out a little bit?
Yeah, we've got two major infrastructure projects that have been on the list for several years. We've got equipment that we have running Nash Road to our Spring Creek substation, and also coming in along the Seward Highway all the way to Fort Rainy. And the equipment is basically 40 years old, so it is beyond its service life, so to speak. We're at a crossroads with these projects. We have to do something in the very near future.
And what I mean by that is we could go in and make the repairs and keep it as a 69 kV transmission. But if we're going to have to make the repairs, why not go ahead and upgrade to the 115 kV? So as you have more growth in SMIC, and if we get cruise ship power and other opportunities, we can upgrade to the 115 and it'll be a nominal increase as we look at those costs moving forward. But regardless of what happens, I mean, the infrastructure, and I was planning to do a work session to go over this in detail, but the infrastructure is in such poor shape that we really need to be looking at doing something in the near future, because you don't just go out in a week and start making repairs. With something like this, it's going to take 12 to 18 months just to get the engineering work done, so that then we can get a contractor and come in and start doing the work that needs to be done. So we need to get in and make repairs to that sense. I would like to see that done immediately if we can get the funding for it.
And I'll turn it over to comments. Did you have comments?
I'll just say again, these are hard to rank, just because there's some of these that are such big projects, you know, the lobbying and everything. The low-hanging fruit is obviously the ones that you're gonna make, that I would make my top priority. So, I mean, the fence would obviously be the top priority, and the Seward Marine and the T-line are on our priority list already.
Correct.
So, again, it's hard, like, you know, to know exactly how to rank them based on, like,
Well, when you look at, and the way I was ranking when I did the survey, I looked at all of the projects from a public safety standpoint. When I look at projects from the electric standpoint, I look at public safety, employee safety, but I also look at service reliability. The two infrastructure projects are high-dollar projects, but if we don't take care of them, then we can have significant outage situations here in Seward that could result in costing the city much, much more money over the long haul. So again, I don't want to put us in a situation, I don't want to scare people, but I don't want to put us in a situation like they just had in Texas. And it's conversations we need to start having.
I'll look around for comments. Go ahead.
I know this was on there about the Seward Marine Terminal electrical upgrades for cruise ships, and Assistant City Manager and I have been talking about different programs, and I know that we're looking in different things where we're looking at revenue stream, and we're also looking at projects that we need to fund, and looking at other communities like Juneau who have success with providing power to cruise ships, and that being a revenue stream. I think it would be important to keep that kind of up there, on there. I think in conversations before with Corey Borgeson, he said that it is eventually possible that our current lines could handle that. So I think that that's really important to keep up there. Also, I think from my personal view, getting the cruise ships to turn off their engines and not burning diesel is also a good thing for our community. And I think the DEC is kind of heading that way in cruise ships across the southeast. So I think it's a double-edged sword on that one for us. On the other comments from the mayor, the cruise ships aren't asking for it, so it would probably require a tariff change to require them to
Which is
connect.
totally possible. Yeah, I mean, we just have to update the tariff.
And I don't disagree. The 69 kV is more than enough to handle the cruise ship dock. But as we continue to grow, I think it's important that we plan for the future.
Does that give, I mean, it seems like, I mean, I guess I do want to hear that, you know, everything's in play. To Mr. Schaefermeyer's point, if, you know, a grant becomes available, whether it's top 3 or not, if it makes sense and it's a project on the list, we wanna, look at that as an option too.
Yeah, again, I think this is the time if we're gonna be repairing the system, let's make the upgrades. It makes sense.
And I know for some of us that did tour the electric substation, either in the past or recently, I mean, that fence does need to get taken care of. That's,
Yes.
Councilmember Cosgrove.
I don't know if this would even qualify to be one of the priorities, but getting a meter so that we can see exactly what we're buying from True Gutch as it comes
Yeah,
in.
and that's in the works.
Okay.
We're already working on it.
What was the cost of that again?
A couple of thousand.
It was like, how much?
For
That, putting a meter out at Dave Street.
less than a couple, it's really about labor, and the meter's about $400.
Perfect.
Okay. Getting things done. Thank you. Harbor Master Regis.
I just want to remind you that we've got a meeting with Senator Machiki.
Yeah.
And he's working on getting the funding to do the T-line going to Smith and upgrades to the substation. And he put that on the top of his list, and since he's on top and he sent it there,
Yeah.
I think it's a really good push that we might get that funding, especially with all this infrastructure money coming in from the feds. So anyway, just throwing that out.
And really, it's two separate projects. It's the one going Nash Road for SMIC, and then it's the one coming from the Lawing substation here, Moose Pass, into Fort Wayne. In spite of the federal gridlock that continues, there's going to be a ton of money spilling out of Washington, D.C. Coming out of this COVID thing, the rebound, infrastructure funding is going to be huge, regardless of what amount they ultimately create. And my counsel to you is look at your project and, of course, you need to prioritize them, but make them project ready. So when the money does come busting loose, you've got the low-hanging fruit there that you can make the case for getting a substantial share of that money. Of course, Seward was successful doing that for years back during the oil origin. We per capita received the largest amount of Prudhoe Bay money of any community in Alaska. We put it to substantially pretty good use. It's still benefiting, starting to benefit more today with SMIC and other things. But that's just my big vision is you need to have plenty of things. And so to the extent you have limited dollars of your own, invest them in getting some things that are ready to go as far as possible. And then when the money does come, you're right there head of the line saying, we've got this and this and it's ready to bid. Then, you can make a strong argument that way.
Which is with these top 3 projects, if we have plans and design documents in place. Good? Was that sufficient?
Good.
Should we go to the next list, Public Works, Water?
You made a good point just on the grant funding, of what comes up, sometimes we switch what we're doing on it. I think these, important to do it the way the grant required everything, and we could do the same project on our own for less money, even though we gave the grant back. So we look at those things, all of us, and what are the real costs of them? And I think as we go through ranking these, I mean, I can go through all the water projects or the sewer projects. Certainly the Low Point Lagoon is up there, but we're really not scheduling that out till 2024. So even though it's a very important project, do we drop priority on it? You know, there's some things that we kind of look for. So I think all of us would love to get more details when we do the 2-hour meeting. I think it'd be a good thing to really go through a little bit more of it so we can have a little better priority from each department and see what we really think, and let you guys go through and we can tell you the whys, and just like this just came up just in the last few days that we got that grant or the loan with the forgiveness on it. So there's things that we can go through, but we certainly have a lot of projects that are due. We have a lot of infrastructure across the board that we could really use some help with. And so I think to Mr. Schaefermeyer's point of this money coming out, we're all trying to be ready it's hard to get full design on everything, but I think there's a lot of it that we can at least point to, this is what we're looking at. The water tank up there. We did one not too long ago as part of the water plant up here, but we also have Kenai, Soldotna, and Palmer. There's a few that just recently have done that we can pull from those and get some sort of plan. The city public works, you know, I looked at some different ones, Soldotna's plans, our plans, what's out there that fits and to make it the best project for the least price. But if we're ready, I agree, if you can say, yeah, we got one, when that money comes, at least we can jump on it. I don't know if I gave you any help on the priority on the screen there.
Well, and these were kind of more distributed, because I don't know that we know as much about them or know how important different ones are. Like I did rate the ductile iron pipe as my number one, but I don't actually know how much of an issue that is, if that needs to be replaced in 5 years, or if it's just an anticipation thing. And then, you know, I also had on there SMIC lower lift station construction, just because I know we'd like to see and encourage more development over at SMIC. So that was kind of, I was kind of splitting the baby. Repairs on one hand and then looking forward with the other. So I guess more education for myself.
And I think you're right about the smaller too, they're easier to
Yeah,
grab
easier,
those.
yeah.
You know, if we have those smaller ones ready, so there's some of those that we look at. We get a grant for development, isn't it? And in that grant, can we put in the fire
Expand
hydrants we
them.
talked about and some of the lift station and those type of things, so.
And I guess that was mixing water and wastewater in that survey. Are there any other comments? This one might be more difficult to try to narrow down for our 2-hour meeting. Go ahead.
Are we just doing water right now?
Well, you know, and I'm sorry I mixed because they were together, but yeah, let's just go back to water.
Okay.
Sorry. Go ahead.
As far as the water auto readers, after speaking to Rob, the electric, and the talk, not that he said it, but potential need of, once again, needing to upgrade our electric meters, and then, you know, is there technology where eventually one day we could get electric and water both in one meter, and our antiquated billing software that goes with our water and electric meters. I don't know that I would put that very high on the list right now until we figure out possibly our antiquated billing software. Because I hesitate to buy any more meters or anything till we have the whole picture. Because it's not just one, you know, it's not just the water, it's not just the sewer, it's not just the electric, it's a whole, and it's not just the finance, it's the whole picture. So that's something that I'd just like to look more as on a whole, instead of just one department, just water.
So maybe getting a better handle on the software and the technology, that side, and then going back to the meters.
Generally, water and electric are not a good thing together. Rob and I get along good together. I don't want water with electric anywhere. Meters, I don't know that there's any way to put them together, but good point as far as that's what we were looking at as we go through this rate study. I haven't got a chance to sit down with Jeanette about it yet, but to go through that, how do we want to get there, and what kind of, we want to get some sort of smart readers, or at the very least a automated, it's a little camera that sits on it and reports right out. So, but to put them together might be really hard. Now, as they come in, you're gonna have them on the software as those reads come in. It's just the meter itself. I don't know that there's anything like that. But prove me wrong. I'd love to see it.
I think you just, mostly just having the conversation of something with finance, that finance also works with electric, right? So it's all flowing
On the
together.
software side.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Water comments?
I would just echo what Councilmember Casagrande said. I really love the idea of making sure that the software is just the most helpful and best software we could possibly have to avoid any potential errors.
It's just a really big thing right now because of the rate study, right? This rate study that we're working on, a big proponent of that is to switch a lot to meters, right? Everything from threeplexes, including threeplexes and up, goes to metered systems according, and we haven't passed it yet,
Right.
but that's where it was headed. But it's a lot of meters to put in, but when we get there, it gives us that definite read instead of the other way. And that, at that point, is where we have to have those meters right when we do those.
So maybe a priority is the software then.
Exactly.
Maybe that's something we need to look at, is making sure we have the best software, because that could be a big investment in and of itself.
Okay. Thanks, Doug.
Okay.
Wastewater, I jumped the gun and I said, you know, I'm sure there's lots of things, but I had the SMIC lagoon. I do see wastewater lagoon sludge removal, which you have on 2024. So we just need to,
Yeah, but the Smith Lagoon is a good thing to mention. If you get the development over there, we really gotta be looking at that as some grant funds to basically just double that lagoon to make a second cell out there. It makes a huge difference, and for future out there for growth, that would, but it's just, it all depends on growth and where we get and what kind of grants we get, because we don't have that in the budget.
go ahead.
Are these open pit, like a open cell waste treatment the best solution? Because we've had problems out there. Is creating a second cell where there's possibly going to be more development later a good idea? Or are there other solutions that we should be looking at that could mitigate future?
We certainly do look at those and look at what we have as far as DEC and discharge and where we're at. We are far from alone on having a lagoon. Across the country, there are actually some of them coming back. How to get them just exactly right, there's some differences there. But example would be Soldotna, they discharge into the Kenai River. They have all kinds of different regulations that they have to do. They have a headworks building that removes solids and belt press, and it's just a whole different setup, so they're treating something different, but it doesn't mean that that isn't the future at some point, but it's a really, really high cost. And it's just how much do you want to pay, you know, to go through it. Yeah, we've had a few things out there, and in 15, before that, it was really bad. Just this last few weeks, as we're trying to come out of construction, the repairs we did, it's not too good. And I wish it was better out there. We're treating it almost daily with the calcium nitrate, and we have a new chemical gonna start coming in just here. We might even be able to start it in tomorrow. It's a different set of bugs and different things that not only clarify the water and take the odor down, but it also eats much, much more of the sludge. The reviews we have are great, but a bucket of it, it's all powdered and just totally, with the water completely out of it, you have to remix it, but it's like $4,000 a bucket. I mean, the technology that's supposed to be there, we're gonna see on this test, but we're supposed to have basically a $13,000 treatment on it coming up real quick. And that's to not only take odors, but also to reduce the sludge and clarify the water. So there, you know, things we're looking at all the time. We certainly look at those other infrastructure things. What would be if not a lagoon, what, you know, and where do we go? So certainly not something we haven't been trying to look at and see what's there, but just where do you go as far as, we can't just do it on what we have.
Councilmember Crystal.
So I know on our state, maybe city priorities, we added looking into moving or adding another sewer lagoon, correct? No? What was it that we added? We added something. No?
It might have been on the SMIC
No,
cell.
it wasn't SMIC. It had something to do with the lagoon out there.
We don't have moving as a priority. No, we do not. Not moving.
What, but we added something on the lagoon.
$50,000 to look at alternative solutions and location.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I do not want it on the record that I'm in favor of moving. I don't know where it would move to at this point. I think we have a lot invested, but.
So not moving it, I'm not so much into moving it, but if we are going to start encouraging a developer's program, as far as expanding our lands and expanding our utilities and bringing more users on. And we're not regulating, maybe people that are pumping our systems, right? So if we're gonna add more hookups, say we're gonna bring more RVs in here, we're gonna get more sludge going into our drop station there, right? I mean, the economy is just gonna grow. And then we're gonna open up more lands, we're gonna get more people on. I don't know if the gentleman that's pumping stuff is actually pumping septics from out of town and pumping into our in-town. I don't know that. And I know there's been some discrepancy, and it's kind of a hot, heated topic of whether our lagoon can handle what we have and how much more development it can handle.
So examining capacity?
Maybe, yes. And maybe never relocating, but maybe if we need to examine capacity into maybe adding an additional other than just SMIC. But I would personally say that SMIC would be my priority because I do want to see, you know, there's a lot of land over there to see that develop. But if you're going to have, you know, Joe over there doing that, Joe could probably also evaluate what we have on this side as well.
That's a good point. Well, we have a very short time. Let's go to, was that enough direction?
Can we go to Harbor?
Yeah, let's go to Harbor. I see you have a smile on your face, so.
She's not sitting there.
Are there comments with Harbor? Do you want to kick it off with some comments?
So just on the, what you have for the Northeast Launch Ramp, and meeting with them today, they came down here, we're just doing them, we're moving to 95% design. Of course, the project price has doubled. So the federal and state money is there, just waiting to get appropriated. And I had a meeting with finance to discuss how we're gonna pay for our 25%, we can get it done. And then also K&L flow, looks like the 14.5 million is in the governor's budget. So that means our grant that we applied for and received or got, we have to come up for our 50%, 1.7 million, which is coming out of my reserves. But I imagine that price tag is gonna go up a little bit too. But having money to do, but both of these are gonna happen probably this fall, this winter. So that's great. And then I'm gonna put it in the budget to do the piling, the annuals for the piling next year.
So you're leveraging again grant funds and then.
Correct. Both these are grant funds, first two are grant funds. The other ones I can apply for, but they have not put out a facility grant for them this year, and they're not going to. So we're just gonna try to do it out of budget if we can.
Sounds good.
Sounds like what we
SMIC? Oh shoot, Nora, did you want to stay up there for SMIC? Sorry. Sorry.
That's okay. That was just, yeah.
Sorry about that. SMIC, talk to us.
So SMIC is moving along, it's expanding, as you know, working on the Coast Guard, the appraisal. We're gonna start working on the appraisal here shortly. I sent them the paperwork today. So they're gonna be working on that for the Coast Guard. That's the biggest project going right now. Get the Coast Guard over there, but of course we have fencing, need more paving going on. But as you know, SMIC was full this winter.
Yeah.
And so you might be hearing complaints, there's a 2-week waiting list to get in the water.
Wow.
The guys are just nonstop doing boat lifts across the bay.
Nice.
So, it's not a bad thing, but some people aren't happy because, oh, I gotta make money. I says, well, we're trying. So some of the people have been flip-flopping boats. Anyways, the fencing definitely needs over there. Ben was saying definitely need more fire hydrants over there. You know, the electric, last year, they went around and looped the whole system now, so if they have a break somewhere, they can still loop around. So that's a nice plus. Just keep on expanding SMIC. I think we're moving forward, working with JAG, and they're trying to get more land also.
Other comments? Go ahead.
I know this is CIP and I don't know if this would go on it, but just, at what point do we prioritize beginning a conversation? I know planning and zoning is already working on land use and all of that. I mean, that's just
SMIC
already
overlay.
going.
Where are we at?
They're
with
working
that?
on the overlay. I'm not sure where they're at. Maybe we'll find out for you.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think they're getting very close to finishing the land use table, and municipal land, yep.
And SMIC overlay is included in the
I
land
believe
use.
so, and
It was at one point.
yeah, I think that they're looking at the next meeting, finishing things up, so hopefully soon.
The hard part for me at SMIC is I want all these things. So I guess it will lean on city administration to prioritize what's most important and most important to our customers and, you know, the fire hydrants, I'm sure, are safety and, you know, any DEC and environmental concerns, all those things would be.
We do have some freight starting here within the next few weeks at SNCC, got freight going out, we got some freight coming in.
Good.
So it's bulk dirt going out and bulk salt coming in, but still some freight coming across the dock, which we haven't had minus just fuel for years and years. It's a great start and they see it, and it's nice. So all the work that council and administration have done over the past few years to get everything we've got going over there, is showing.
Comments? We have 5 minutes before the next one. Did you? Go ahead.
Thank you for allowing me to comment. I told Stephen, I said, you know, my first day I'm gonna sit back and listen, but I can't keep quiet. So, one thing that I wanted to say is that I really appreciate that the council is taking this on and obviously so diligent with it, and I'm looking forward to the 2-hour work session where we can go in a deeper dive on it, because the decisions that are made today will affect tomorrow, and you know, the electric was 40 years, so we're talking decisions that will affect that bar. And I 100% agree with, and I'm sorry I don't remember your last name, with having projects ready. The ARA funding, and I think the 2000s, that was those projects that were ready. I was in Palmer at the time, we had a project ready and was fully funded by those dollars. So I think having the projects ready is very important. Regarding the products, electric, water, sewer, and accounting, there are products out there. There is some, I've not heard of a combined meter either, and there's in my opinion, a good reason for not, because there are times you need to shut off electric but keep water. So that's why they don't combine them together that I'm aware of. But those are my comments. Thank you.
Any 3-minute comment? Go ahead.
Thank you. So, between the period of 2012 and 2015, I believe, it might have been 2011 and 2015, council had M.L. Foster / Lauren Lehman do 3 separate studies of the lagoon because the lagoon was stinking. And every year they ordered a study. Every single one of those 3 studies in the back at some point said the lagoon is ultimately going to be too small, especially in the summer, for future growth, right? And that was 2012, almost 10 years ago. So the thing that I keep bringing up is, if we know it's too small, we need to be proactive about identifying an alternative location for not necessarily a replacement, but to supplement it. Right? And you find some dividing line, whether it's downtown and everything that way and then everything that way. There is land. There's land out in Forest Acres. I mean, we could find a place. The thing is that what's coming out of the federal money now is there's a lot of, for Alaska, coastal community wastewater control money. And so we need to, like, get that on a priority list at a high level so that it is ready. Like Daryl is suggesting, we need to be ready for that money. And this is a project that if we don't get it on the list now, you know, it's going to take 10, 20, 30 years for it to end up wherever we're going to put it. By then, you're going to really need it. Because right now, when we haven't gotten through this summer, but last summer, it stank. And that was last summer. That was no cruise ship people, that was no buses, that was, you know, nobody from outside of Alaska. So if it couldn't get through last summer without stinking, and when it stinks, it means it's over capacity. It can't keep up with what's coming in. If it can't keep up with what's coming in last summer, what is the future going to look like? So I really thank you, Councilmember Casagrande, for really writing it, because that you understand, you got those copies of those studies. The miraculous thing is, if you've got to go back into legislative history, it's been scrubbed. Brenda has looked in the vault for those reports. I have a copy of one, but, you know, a copy of a copy. But I don't know where they are, and I don't know why you don't have those as a resource. So, thank you.
Well, let's adjourn this meeting, and we'll get the PERS representative on the phone and load.
He told me he was attending.
Oh, in person?
Yeah. I don't see you.
So, thank you. We might as well, if folks want to break for 3
Thank you,
minutes.
guys.
I don't know. Steven, do you have the guy's number?
I have his office number. I'm gonna call
Okay.
John right now.
How much into electric, so let me back up on that one, but we need it, right?
Yeah, it's too great for the league, for sure.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, just there's more than I know. Right.
Brandon, hi, it's Brenda Baloo. So, obviously, when you said you were attending the meeting, you didn't mean in person. Right, okay. I will call you back shortly, at this number, okay?
I can't keep quiet.
No, it's good.
No, I'm just gonna call and put him on hold, I guess. So, he has no way to, okay, so we're not gonna use this for the work session, but you can move back up.
Department had someone here about PERS?
I do. I like learning about that stuff.
How was your first day, Jeanette?
Good.
It was?
Yeah. It's been good.
Has it been a whirlwind?
Yes. It does.
I'm so glad the weather is nice for you, though. It makes so much of a difference.
It does.
It's always
It does.
nice.
She knows better. We can't fool her.
I know, that's what
That's why I know
said,
she's
you're
not
from
gonna-
Alaska.
Yeah, I'm scared of Alaska.
Hi,
Right,
you know what?
exactly.
We're gonna, if you can just hold on, I'm gonna leave you on the phone, but just,
I thought I was biting into a pickle. It was not a pickle.
you'll hear the
My
mayor
mouth is on fire.
call for you to.
I'm like,
Okay? Very good. Brandon?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Did you understand?
We'll give you a second, we'll tell you when to start.
Okay. I'm gonna put myself on a brief hold, because I got another coworker here to call.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, great.
I was biting into a pickle. It was not a pickle.
Jalapeno?
I'm like, oh.
Do you not like jalapeno?
If I knew that what I was biting into, it would have been better.
I love jalapeno artichoke dip.
Do you?
Like, oh my gosh, it's so good.
I love artichoke spinach dip, but
Yeah, jalapeno artichoke dip is like my kryptonite.
really?
So good.
So Janet, did you find a place to live? Jeanette, I mean, did you find a place to live?
I'm actually across the street.
Right here in this building?
The upstairs apartment.
Commute's a killer.
I can see we don't have to give her a car.
It's easy commute, yeah.
You know, have you looked into the history of that building yet?
I
She was telling me some of it, yes.
I didn't go super far back, but
Yeah. I definitely love to know all
Cat
of it.
Williams' parents had it.
water.
All right, I'm back with you guys, just so you know.
Okay, great, we're gonna settle
fun.
down here. And I'll go ahead and call this second work session of the night to order. It's regarding the public employees retirement systems. Why don't you go ahead on the phone and introduce yourself, and looks like there's information in your packet. I don't know if you're prepared to provide us with a presentation, or
Okay, well, I'll start off by saying, good evening, my name is Brandon Greensburg, I'm a regional retirement counselor for the state of Alaska Division of Retirement Benefits, and I am your point of contact for any retirement-related issues that you folks might have with the PERS system. And I also do have joining us today, one of our accountants from our finance section, her name is Tracy Walter, and she deals a lot with all of the reporting and contributions and payrolls that are submitted to the division from employers.
Great, well, thank you for joining us tonight. We very much appreciate it.
No, absolutely. So
I'll just say hello really quick.
Hello.
Hello.
So, no, I did send a bunch of information over to you guys. I understand you wanted to learn a bit more about the PERS system. Possibly you guys have some questions about terminating groups and classifications and maybe participation as a whole. I'm not too sure where you are with those questions, but I wanted to get you as much information as I could pertaining to the PERS system. One of the items that I included was a new and updated employer manual. So this is your number one tool and resource for anything PERS related, for any questions that you might have pertaining to our systems. And of course, I'm here to provide interpretation or any assistance that you guys need thereafter. I also included a flyer having to do with termination studies, give some good generic information to you, but as well as the tier charts. And those tier charts help to explain the differences between the 3 defined benefit tiers, as well as the defined contribution overview flyer for all of our defined contribution members, which does make up a little bit more than 50% of the employer workforce today. So it's probably that defined contribution flyer that you'll find yourselves utilizing more and more with your employees as time goes on. But I would like to go ahead and open up to hear what kind of questions you guys had today to, kind of help drive this conversation towards what it is you're really looking for.
That sounds good. Go ahead.
So I submitted some questions to the assistant city manager earlier this week. One of the questions was, what were the current positions that we had open that were unfilled and we are currently paying PERS for? Those positions are in TYC, which has been a part of Parks and Rec that we have now turned over to the Boys and Girls Club. So those positions now belong under the Boys and Girls Club, and they're paid through the Boys and Girls Club. My second question to that was, how much are we paying each month for to keep those positions in PERS?
Okay, let me look at something here real quick. Okay, so I'm taking a look at your guys' participation agreement right now for what it is should be participating. The original participation agreement signed back in January of 1979 identified that all full-time and part-time employees shall participate. Going through looking at your amendments that you've had, you guys have had 4 amendments, 5, you guys have actually had quite a few. I got 10 amendments to date. Do you know if you guys have ever removed those positions from participation? Obviously, it doesn't sound like you possibly have.
No.
No, okay. Do we know exactly how many positions there are that the Boys and Girls Club has taken over?
So there are 3 PERS positions for TYC that currently sit unfilled.
That's set unfilled because the Boys and Girls Clubs are now contracted to do those positions.
Correct.
Okay. When did this contract with the Boys and Girls Club begin?
A couple of years ago, we have to come up with a decision here within the next few months, I believe, to take them out of PERS or to put it back in to hire somebody in those positions.
Okay, so either you're debating on filling those positions or canceling the contract, and I wasn't too sure about your answer there.
Yeah, so we're probably not gonna cancel the contract. We weren't sure if it was gonna work out, and that's why we kept those positions open. But it looks like if Boys and Girls Club's working out, so we're gonna probably have to do that study to get rid of the positions.
So and then I have an add-on question to that. So if we end up paying off positions, do we get the money refunded if those positions are reinstated?
No, you would not, because what the termination study actually entails is, one, the cost of the study itself. The study itself will let us know what the one-time termination cost is for removing those positions from participation. That one-time cost represents any automatic vesting that a member would receive, considering that the positions are unfilled right now. There probably might not be anything of a one-time termination cost associated with it. But then there's also the ongoing liability that all employers have to the PERS fund towards the unfunded liability. And right now, the present rate of the unfunded liability, I just had it up, just 1 second.
It's 18.31%.
Yes, it is. So that's what the study will tell us. The fact that we have this contract out there and we've got these 3 positions sitting vacant, we may need to do some further digging on those 3 positions sitting vacant for so long. Yeah, I mean, it's good that you guys still have the positions. They're open. Obviously, they're funded for, and they haven't been necessarily removed arbitrarily yet, because, you know, there's acknowledgement that they still exist and that we need to go through the process of the termination study itself. Was that the gist of what you guys needed to know, is what to do with these 3 positions?
No, there's lots of questions.
Okay, let's keep going.
So I guess in context with that, I'll let you take over, but so what, since we have those positions, what does it mean to substantially change the job description? Like, could we utilize those positions in the same department and change their job description to some extent?
Well, and that's a reclassification of sorts, and I have seen this happen in the past.
Well,
but
wait.
normally-
So what I'm saying is, what makes something a reclassification? Like, I'm not saying we want to reclassify them. I'm actually stepping back from that and asking you how much of a job description can change before, like, we could argue with you if it was a reclassification or not.
Well,
And where is that written down for us to review closely?
that is a good question, as far as asking where something like this should be written down, because the way it comes down to is that when it comes to classifying a position, we leave that responsibility up to the employer to classify the position. But we got to look at the job duties and the actual position description of the positions that we currently have in place. For instance, let's use these 3 Parks and Rec positions as an example. These 3 people have duties associated with managing Parks and Rec facility. It would be kind of hard to see these positions being turned into something like an accounting technician somewhere else.
Oh, sure.
If they carry just a couple of those, you know, Parks and Rec duties along with them. To say that there's anything written down, I don't know if I have something like that for you, but I can tell you what we have done in the past. And normally when I'm working, and I'm just going to use the word, a reclassification from one position to another position, or enhancing a position, we put them through a stress test in which we're evaluating the duties that the position is currently doing and what they will be doing. And we're looking for at least a 50% stress test here, in which the duties that the position was doing still exist within the new position, although those duties we are now enhanced or changed slightly. So we do use a 50% test on this.
Okay. And it would probably help that the positions are staying in the same department.
It would. And another thing that helps us too in evaluating this is seeing an organizational chart before and after these changes are made. So at the end of the day, we can still see the same position.
Okay.
Because at least that way we know that we're not removing a position and just creating a position.
Did you have follow-up?
Non-follow-up.
Oh, good. Do you have any question? Go ahead.
Yes. Are those currently our only unfunded or unfilled positions that we are paying PERS on currently?
I do not know, that's what you would know.
To my knowledge, the only positions would be those that are advertised. Those are the only positions in the organization that sit, like, that there's been a decision to not fill. The only other vacant positions are those that are like listed in the council meeting packet that we're currently advertising. And just so all council knows, so if you take out the IBEW employees and the seasonal positions, we've got exactly 80 current PERS participants in the organization.
Did you have another question?
No, somebody else can go.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll turn over if it's all right. I know administration had a number of questions, but I'll look at the dais first. I'll let you go ahead.
You asked my primary question.
Okay.
I'm good at this point.
Oh, okay. So, anything else you think we need to know? Maybe I'll back up and if you've never, I mean, we really are looking for an education on PERS because we deal with this so much and, you know, we hear that we can't do X, Y, Z because of PERS. So I wonder if there's like some sort of background or, you know, ABC you can walk us through.
Well, from an employer standpoint, I mean, that manual is going to be your main resource. But before we go into something further, I do want to know who is it that I should be working with there at the city on these 3 Parks and Rec positions, because I want to look into some information on my side and know who it is I should be coordinating with to help you with this.
Well, I think you've been our new city manager is starting today, Jeanette Bauer, and I think they have your contact information with email, so we'll make that connection.
So I can work with Jeanette and Tammy.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay. Well, it sounds like you're wanting to know, you know, what some of those do's and don'ts may be. One thing is that, you know, when it comes to creating positions, because, you know, as time goes on and our city will expand, you know, to our employees. One thing to remember is that a position, if it's classified as being eligible to participate, and again, I go back to your original agreement, which was stated that all permanent, full-time, and part-time employees shall participate. Knowing what those parameters are would be helpful to you, because with PERS, for a full-time position, that's a minimum of 30 hours a week or more. Now, a part-time person is classified as working a minimum of 15 hours a week, but less than 30, so basically 15 to 20.
But and that's seasonal and full-time? I mean, seasonal and permanent?
That's correct, because we're looking at whether or not they are full-time or part-time permanent employees. Seasonal employment does count unless it's been specifically excluded by you guys to participate.
Okay, so yeah, that's why I wanted to clarify. I don't think seasonal counts for PERS with our agreement. I've never heard that before. That's what I was trying to clarify.
Okay, I'm looking through your amendments right now. Yes, you guys did remove the chief of police position as well as seasonal employee.
No, chief of police hasn't been
Back
removed.
in June of '06, did you put the chief of police back in?
Yeah.
I think what he's saying is at that same time, the seasonal positions were pulled out, at the same time that we pulled out Tom Clemens.
Yes, both actions were done at the same time.
Right. So currently,
Yeah,
we're
so I
not,
don't see that.
so currently seasonal employees are not PERS participating.
Correct, you guys excluded them back on June 19th of 2006. Actually, effective date July 1 of 06, that's the day of signature was June 19th.
And also temporary, non-permanent.
Those are excluded from participation by nature, that's an exclusion by the person itself. So, yes, temporary positions, whether they're short-term or long-term non-terms, are excluded from participation.
All right, well, I'll let you keep going. I just wanted to make sure I understood that point.
Okay. Well, temporary employment's a good thing to bring up because we do have a temporary employee policy that we do follow with employers when hiring a temporary employee. Is hiring temporary something that you guys commonly do?
No,
Not other than the
No.
seasonals.
no.
Okay. Do you guys have any kind of city code surrounding your temporary employment?
To my knowledge, no.
Well,
Is seasonal?
seasonal,
seasonals,
I think
just-
more like seasonal, cause then they can't work for a whole year, they have to take a break, and we have to re-advertise the position.
Right.
Okay, so you hire people seasonally, but they can only work one season for you, and then they gotta take a season off before they come back?
2 months, I think.
It's a time period. Hey, you're not asking the questions here, you you need to tell us some information.
Well, yes, I am. I'm running my employer at the same time.
Okay, well why don't you educate us, and I guess we'll stop asking questions. Why don't you back up and give us a good overview?
I have a,
Okay, go
All right,
ahead.
So,
Can I ask a clarifying question?
sure.
For seasonal employees, say take a break. Let's say you have a seasonal employee that only works in the summer. Then they take a break because they're off from September or October through the next May or June, whenever you re-advertise the position and you possibly rehire that same person. Is that what you're saying as a seasonal employee?
I'm
No, that
asking
sounds like
you,
temporary by nature to me, because a seasonal person is a person who comes back and works a specific state at a time, on a year-by-year basis. Basically, they remain an employee, and they're on the books, it's just that their own schedule.
No, we don't- that's a
4 or 8
different,
months out of the year.
yeah, that's a different we're not using the same definitions.
Okay,
That's what
yeah,
I'm
so
trying to clarify, what your definition of seasonal was versus a temporary employee.
yeah, seasonal to me and my interpretation is the person who actually owns that position, they own that TCN number, they are a permanent employee, who's scheduled to work for a stated amount of time every year.
Okay,
So,
Casanova?
but the way you're treating it sounds more or less like a temporary employee to me, because there's no guarantee of continued employment on that season.
right.
Right, exactly.
Okay,
Okay, Councilmember
Okay,
Casagrande has a question.
Well, actually, I just wanna hear what he has to say to explain temporary.
Okay,
That he was on he was
Yes.
going somewhere with that.
yes, temporary is a big thing. So temporary employment, as far as the policy goes, has to basically, well, there has to be a contract. The contract cannot exist longer than 2 years. We do ask that these temporary contracts have a beginning and an end date. Okay? And this needs to, basically, you need to prove that you're also trying to fill the position with a eligible participating person if the temporary position is replacing, or in lieu of a participating person. For instance, let's say you're having a hard time finding a finance director. As we know, all cities in Alaska are having a pretty difficult time now. Maybe there's someone in retirement who can do the position, but they don't want to come out of retirement. They don't want to be a participating person. So you can utilize a temporary contract for upwards of 2 years to fill that position, all the while you're still advertising for this position and trying to fill it with an eligible participating member. So you have to do your portion too, as far as advertising and trying to fill it with a participating person, but you have this person filling in on a temporary basis, not to exceed 2 years, while you try to find the right person.
So would we have to pay the PERS while?
yeah, so do we still have to pay the PERS on the vacant position as we're looking to fill that, even with the temporary person in place?
Well, the position does still exist as far as your salary floor is concerned, and for what it is that you're paying to the PERS, your 22% cost share, that does not go away because that position does still exist. But what you're not doing is paying any contributions on behalf of that person while they're attempt to the PERS. For instance, a defined contribution member, you're paying an employer 5% matching contribution rate. You wouldn't be paying that 5% because the temporary position is specifically excluded. So there's no contribution on the employee's behalf that either the member or you, the city, are paying while you have a temporary person employed.
Okay.
But yes, you are still paying for the position.
So if I can just tag on to that question, so basically, when we have a person in PERS that is employed, we match the employee's PERS, and then there's also another 18.31, I thought it was 22%, but maybe it changed to 18.31, that is always constant. So I guess to clarify my question, whether the position's filled or not, there's always a price that we pay. And then when the position's filled, there's a matching price that we pay on top of the constant price that we're always paying?
Correct.
Mayor?
Go ahead.
Thank you. So oftentimes, and I know things have changed as well, I know reversing about 5 years ago, if we ever wanted to hire a new position, it was like, oh, hold the horses, unless it's gonna be a temporary position, we don't wanna do it because it'll create a PERS position. Is that?
Exactly.
Is that still the case today?
Well, it is still the case today, because you gotta think, we go back to that original agreement from '79, all permanent, full-time, and part-time positions shall participate. So think about it, you can create any position you want, but you wanna be careful, because you need to identify whether or not, hey, if I create this position, by our agreement, they're automatically gonna be participating. Does this person wanna participate? Do we want this to be a participating position? Because if you do not, then it's easy to go through the steps of passing a resolution and an amendment to remove a position from participation if it's never existed. So you remove it before you hire for it, and you never have a termination study because there's nothing to base a study on. There's never been a person in this position, it's brand new, newly created, and we want to remove it before we hire. That's perfect, that's clean.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, and then just for, if I may, for clarifications, there's something that we're doing right now, and maybe it's not PERS. I thought it was PERS, so I'm gonna use PERS as the example. In the tiers that we just created in our new payroll study, anybody new and on the lower scale is not part of, I thought we were saying PERS. That's not true.
Everyone has to be in PERS. It's a different,
Is there something that they're not contributing to, or something that they don't have to do, or something that?
Non-union,
oh, union or non-union?
union or non-union, I think now.
No. Maybe it's the dues, maybe, I know it's not that. Okay, so I just got a cloud in my head, thank you.
It could be the,
That's okay.
it could be the change with the person 2006 with the different tiers, no?
Maybe.
That's when we created the defined contribution plan, because we closed the
Yeah.
defined benefit system and we created the defined contribution system.
That's maybe what.
So, and there are different contribution rates associated with the two systems.
So new employees
So
are
maybe
under
maybe
this,
that's what you're thinking.
the new employees are under the defined contribution as opposed to
Correct.
old. Vice Mayor Buckland?
My question is, so now if we were to say, okay, we think the Boys and Girls Club have a handle on this, and we want to eliminate one position of the two positions that we have, because we think we can reclassify one. How much do you think it would cost us to eliminate that position?
Okay, so out of these three positions, tell me, what are the classifications of these positions? What do they call them?
Teen Youth
What are the
Coordinator,
job titles?
is that what it is?
That's pretty close.
Teen Youth Coordinator, I think is what the position is.
Teen Youth Coordinator.
Teen Youth, like aged 13,
Yep.
Teen Youth Coordinator.
Okay, so is it 3 Teen Youth Coordinator positions, or is one of them like a supervisor or manager position who watches the other two?
It might be the coordinator and then maybe a program aide or something.
Programming, I think it was.
Yeah,
I remember that.
So we got a coordinator, we got a
And two.
program aide.
yeah. That's a good start.
Okay, so do we have 2 coordinators and 1 aide, or 1 coordinator and 2 aides?
One coordinator and 2 aides.
All right, perfect. Okay, because what we're looking at here is 2 different classifications of the position. So we have 1 coordinator, and we can assume that the coordinator is the person that was running the facility, and the 2 aides were the folks that this position supervised, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that's where I would go to that termination flyer that I sent you guys. Okay?
Yes, it says, once it is determined a termination study is needed, the division will refer the member to the plan actuary for the necessary calculations.
Yeah, it's a 2-page flyer that I sent to you guys, the determination studies at the top.
Yeah, so the 2 pages is really what we were focusing on. All the other stuff was kind of, you know, we were looking more towards the termination of termination studies and costs for eliminating positions, or what we were
Okay.
paying and contributing for PERS, not
Well,
on the
looking at
employee
the-
side.
Well, looking at page 1 of the termination study, on the left-hand side, the bottom bullet, says reduction in force, no termination study required. So the city of X is reducing maintenance workers from 5 to 4. The job classification of maintenance worker still exists with 4 remaining members, and the job classification has not been excluded. So what we're looking at here, using your situation as an example, you have 2 program aides, and you want to reduce it down to 1 program aide. All you did is reduce the number of positions. You did not eliminate a position. Therefore, no study is required for a reduction in force.
We're still paying them.
Okay.
So just a follow-up. So if you were looking at 50% of your stress test, if the coordinator had 4 duties: supervise employees, supervise children, clean, and drive. I'm just saying 4.
Okay.
And then the next position, that next person, we want to adjust that, would be driving and cleaning. That would be 50% of that position.
You know, looking at it in such simple terms, yes.
Thank you.
Now, here's the thing. When you guys do want to do a reclassification, you want to make sure that we're not mistakenly eliminating a position and creating another. So we do ask that our employers, when they're considering, reclassifying a position, to send us, or me, like specifically, send me the existing position description for the youth coordinator position, and then send me another position description for what we want to reclassify it to. That way we can make sure to review all the facts and circumstances and to make sure that this is going to work without causing us to have to go through termination studies. So I will work with you.
Okay.
You're fine, go ahead.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
So in the event that there was only 1 program coordinator, then we would have to look more at eliminating, right? So I think what I hear you saying is if there's 2, we can reclassify. But if it comes to a point of reclassifying that makes it an elimination, then we're talking something totally different?
Well, what we're talking about is that if we're truly going to do a reclassification and have this position absorbed elsewhere that has similar duties, like maybe there's another coordinator position somewhere else in the city, I don't know. My hope is that with reclassification, we wouldn't be removing the position, it would just be, quote unquote transfer. And it's possible that a termination study will not be needed there. But for instance, if you want to, get rid of the teen youth coordinator position and, create an assistant manager position, I mean, we can all assume that in a situation like that, the job duties are going to be dramatically different, and the 2 would not exactly mesh. So you would be eliminating 1 position while at the same time creating another position. So it can't be too far out in the field of what you want to turn these positions into as far as reclassifications go. They got to be similar in nature, and that's where we apply that 50-50 stress test.
So one thing that I thought I heard you guys say was that you were looking at possibly removing 2 of 3 positions from PERS. Did I misunderstand that part?
No, that's one of the things we're looking at.
So the way that I think what you're saying is that you would keep the teen youth coordinator, but you would remove both program aides.
We're not sure
as
what
a
we're doing.
possibility. And then I'm just throwing out an option of something you might be looking at. And then in conjunction with that, the teen youth coordinator might take on other responsibilities and it actually be a reclassification. That sounds to me like one of the scenarios you're possibly looking at.
Yeah, potentially.
So can I?
So-
Okay, in that situation, if we are going to
Yeah.
be eliminating the 2 program aid positions, then that would trigger the need for a termination study.
Right.
How much would that cost?
The average cost of just the study itself, this doesn't seem like a very broad scope of a termination. You know, in my experience, they can be anywhere from $3 to $7 grand for the study alone.
And then what is and of course, the outcome of that study is gonna give us a cost, but can you give us at least a ballpark of the dollar amount that you'd be talking about in that scenario?
I could not speculate that number so aggressively.
Because it would depend on the annual salary.
So
And
how,
it
what's
depends on
the,
the people that were in the positions and whether they were a DB member in the defined benefits plan or in the DC plan. That plays a large role into how much the one-time termination cost is.
Can you repeat those definitions? You said DD plan and what?
Defined contributions and
The DB plan is the defined benefit plan, and the DC plan or DCR plan is the defined contribution retirement plan.
And that would just be the last employees in those positions?
Yes.
and is there, I mean, so what, is there a formula that's used to do that calculation, or, I mean, I'm guessing it's an objective mechanism that gives you your
That's all
outcome.
done by the actuary, and I can't provide you the details of how the calculations are actually made.
Go ahead.
And if
So,
you don't have any current active employees in those positions, that will also play a role into the termination study and the one-time termination cost.
Okay. Go ahead.
when you initiate the study, let's just say we're like, okay, well, let's just play with one and let's see what it takes to terminate one of these, and we throw out $5,000 for the study. We can change our mind, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, the study itself just presents you with the information needed and the cost needed to go forward. If you don't want to remove it after you do a study, yeah, there's no obligation.
But I think you're better off if you're wanting to do the study, doing the study based, like if you're looking at eliminating the program aid, you're trying to decide whether you're going to eliminate both program aid or just one program aid. I could do a little bit of follow-up, but I think you might be better off to go ahead and do the termination study as if you were eliminating both program aids.
Yeah.
If you're only eliminating one program aid, there is no termination study.
Right, because it's
Is that correct,
just,
Brenda?
yeah, it's
Yeah,
just.
that's what I led off with, that it's just a reduction in force if at the end of the day this position still exists.
Right. But if you're gonna eliminate both program aids, then that's where a termination study would be required.
I would not recommend limiting the scope of the study, considering the cost associated with it. Now, I mean, if you guys are looking at removing both classifications and maybe starting new with a new position, it might behoove you to just get the study for both positions. And if you don't want to eliminate both positions at that time, you know, you can always ask them to break it down to just removing the program aid. Because see, it's the initial study that costs the most. There's a lot of times that employers will change what it is they want to remove and go back and have them run the study again. And it's dramatically cheaper for them to run the study again if your needs change, if you put everything on the table the first time.
Can I clarify? Maybe I drifted off. So, we have 3 positions just that we're kind of talking about for an example. Did I hear you say we're better off to do a termination study for the termination of all 3 of those? And then scaling it back if we need, even though there's
If that
2?
is likely your aim, then I would recommend that. Yes.
Okay.
Well, and I think we're looking at one of the positions can be used within the department with just a few changes to the job description.
Then let's go through that first before we start talking about studies. Yeah, let's review those position descriptions and let's see if it's a true reclassification, and then we'll be able to check that one off your list.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor?
Could you expand more on something that I don't understand, is that one, you have the termination cost, or I'm sorry, you have the study cost, and then you have the termination cost. Can you expand on what the termination cost is and some averages of, you know, what you may have seen, because all we know is what is told to us. So what?
I hear you.
Yeah.
Well, let's break down what the actual costs are a little bit more finer. Let's look at it from this. There's 3 costs. You got the cost of the study itself, and that's the $3 to $7 grand that you pay just to have the study done. Okay? Then you have the one-time termination cost associated with the study, and that is for if there's any employees who are being impacted by this termination to where they gain automatic vesting. Because that's what happens to anyone who's currently in the position when the position is removed, is that they gain an automatic vesting right for the amount of service that they have within the system at that time.
Which isn't the case in any of these positions, but that's good to
Not
know
you
for
guys,
future.
no.
Yeah,
Which
that's
is-
good to
which
know.
is-
Yeah.
It could be likely that there is no one-time termination cost with you. I just can't guarantee that until the study's actually performed. Then there's the ongoing liability to the PERS unfunded liability that you have to pay. That was at 18.23% that Tracy mentioned.
And that's 18.23% of the salary?
It's based on 3 different conditions. In your case, most likely it would be based on the salary of each one of the employees that's being terminated from the last time you had the position filled. If there's nobody currently in it, we couldn't base it off of a salary currently being paid to those employees, except for if they are contracted out to the Boys and Girls Club. I don't think we even look at those salaries for contract. It would be just based on the last person that was in the position,
Eligible to participate, yeah.
eligible to participate in the position, and what their salary was at that time.
Okay, but just to make sure, so the study, the cost to the impacts of vesting if appropriate, and then the liability to PERS, is there anything else?
That's the 3 costs.
Thank you. Go ahead.
So could you tell me hypothetically, if we were eliminating a position that the pay was $50,000 a year, at that last time that we had hired somebody for that position, how much would that cost us?
So for the ongoing past service cost part of it, it would be, if they make $50,000 a year times the 18.31% for fiscal year 22. Now the actuary reevaluates those past service cost rates annually, and they either go up or down. Currently, they've been more on an upward trend than a downward trend. So right now, the past service cost rate is lower than the 22% that you currently would be funding for those positions.
Right.
So as an example, fiscal year 21 was at 18.23, and Tracy just mentioned that 22 was at 18.31. So you can see how it's slowly creeping upwards.
So is that the flat cost, or is it multiplied by additional years? So.
You have to pay that every year. So every year, the actuary determines a new rate. And
Right.
so whatever the salary is that the past service cost is based on, which is generally the person that's currently in the position, if it's not contracted out, or the person that was in the position, or the last person in the position at the time of termination. Or if, for some reason, your salaries have fallen below your salary floor from 2008, then we would use the salary floor rate of 2008.
But I always thought there was a way, instead of paying that percentage annually, that there was a way to do a buyout of a position. Is that not true?
No, that's not accurate.
So we carry that in perpetuity. If we terminate a position, we carry that in perpetuity. What if we keep that position on the books and don't fill it?
As
Then you're
long
still
as
paying
you-
this one.
Right, you're still paying a 22%, as you know, and if you fall below your salary floor of 2008, that's where it matters whether or not you're actually paying a 22% on that.
But if we look at those positions and we're able to keep those positions with tweaking the job descriptions, then we're just paying the normal with the salary of person that's working in that.
That's correct.
I always thought there was a way to buy it out.
Me too.
Can we go back to the second point just to reiterate it, just so I heard you correctly? So the first cost is the termination study, $3,000 to $7,000. The second, let's say we currently have a person in a position. Did I hear you right that they automatically become vested if their position is eliminated? Can you walk us through that?
Well, you gotta think, whether it's defined benefit or defined contribution member.
So let's say they're a tier 3.
Tier 3, okay, defined benefit. So let's say that person in that position only had 3 years of service and they removed the position. What we're gonna be doing is vesting that person for a benefit with only having those 3 years, not achieving the 5 years. So they become automatically vested for pension benefits based on the service and salaries that they had existing in the system at the time of determination. So they become automatically vested in this benefit.
But not up to the 10 years with the medical, just the 5-year break?
Correct. Yeah, because when it comes to the medical, you gotta have those 10 years in order to get the system-paid medical benefit from the system. But even with the 3 years and being eligible for a pension benefit based on those 3 years, they'll be provided access to medical, but they have to pay the monthly premium in order to receive it. But again, if we were talking about a tier 1 or tier 2 member, same situation. 3 years, position gets eliminated, they're 100% vested. And they would be vesting in the medical because they don't qualify for that 10-year requirement like a tier 3 does.
But wait, but even in this termination studies, it says that AS 3935-625 requires employers to pay continuing contributions to the plan each payroll period until the past service liability of the plan is extinguished. So doesn't that say?
Correct, that's that 18.31% we were talking about.
Right, so doesn't that say that there's the sunset date to the ongoing years?
Yeah,
We can't tell you
Go ahead.
specifically what that date is.
Is that?
It depends on the market and how well the markets do. Currently, it's estimated to be 30 years out before the unfunded liability is completely paid. Right. So,
Wow.
but we can't say for a fact that it's 30 years and it'll be done. A lot of it's going to depend on what the markets do over the next 30 years and whether or not it's going to be 40 years instead of 30 years, or whether it's going to be 25 years instead of 30 years.
Yeah, there's a lot of factors that play into it too. You've got to think about the draw upon the system to provide the benefits too. The defined benefit system is a closed system, and more lately, it's just people retiring. So you got to think, the more that people retire, the more of a draw from the system itself. Now, a lot of those benefits are funded for, but again, with it being a closed system, you don't have those employer contributions going into it anymore.
Well, yeah, because now you're with the defined
So
contribution.
it is things to think about. I mean, but again, life expectancy has to be taken into account for too, and frankly, people are living longer these days than they used to. So there's a lot of different variables and factors to consider here about when that unfunded liability is going to be 16%. I mean, with Tracy saying that it's 30 years out from today, I understand that. It was just a couple of years ago in which it was mentioned to me that it's possible it could happen by 2045. But again, it's a moving target. Nobody knows when that unfunded liability is going to be completely extinguished.
Okay. Any other questions? Go ahead.
Not a question, but a comment. Thank you so much for your patience as we kind of gone through this, because that was very enlightening now as we look towards our next budget and positions. So.
Okay.
So maybe anything else you think we should have asked you that you'd like to share?
From an employer standpoint, no. I would like to talk with Tammy and, Janet more further about the temporary appointments, just to basically give you guys a copy of our the policy memo to follow, because I have all of this information in writing for you guys. Do you know when the last time it is you were audited by the State Social Security Administrator?
Did this just trigger an audit?
No.
That's great, that's all.
Let's get a grip on things. I'll look to the public. Do you guys have any questions? Go ahead.
Not questions, I wanted to say statement.
Go ahead, yeah.
Patrick Messmer, Seward Public Employees Association. I had a lot of people blowing up my phone over this, and I can't stress enough how important it is that we stay in PERS for our employees. It's also in our contract, so there'd be a legal fight if there was a huge withdrawal.
Yeah, just to clarify before you go further, we are not
Step by
talking
step.
about getting out of PERS. We definitely asked for this as an education because we've had so many questions.
There was a lot
But-
of,
option.
Yeah, I mean, it's,
Yeah.
we have a contract. It was not even part of the discussion.
that's a relief, because there was
Yeah.
people who didn't know what was going
No,
on, and so
no.
they wanted to come talk. So
Yeah.
that's a relief, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, and just really be clear with folks. I don't even think that's on anyone's radar, not even close.
If I can just clarify, I think my biggest reason for supporting this work session was every time we create a new position, I'm saying, guys, we'll never get rid of this liability. This is not just for today. And so I think now we all understand, like, we're taxing our children every time we create a new position. So I think that's where we're at, and that's great. I'm glad that we're all on the same page now.
Well, I want to lead off by saying, I am your guys' resource for virtually. Anytime you have any questions, eligibility, contract, anything having to do from an employer standpoint, I'm here to help you with it. And I do want you to think of me as a resource, but more importantly, I'm here for the members as well. In years past, regional councils travel to their areas to meet with their employers. We would travel at least 6 times a year. But our travel budgets did get cut back in 2016, and we have not been able to travel as regularly, basically not at all anymore due to COVID, in these last 5 years. But we're still able to hold work sessions together. I'm still here to help you with any employee-related questions that you have. You can give my information out to any and all of your employees. And I would be happy to talk to them about, the retirement process, eligibility, applying for benefits, anything they need retirement related. That's what I'm here to help you with. And also, if you wanted to, use me as a part of your onboarding for new employees, because I can help them hit the ground running, explain the retirement systems to them, talk to them about their options, the investment possibilities with Empower Retirement. So I think we would all agree that, the more a person knows about the employer that they're working for, the more happy they're going to be and more likely they are to stick around. So let me help you do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Good point to end on. Do you have a comment about PERS or the regular meeting starting in 8 minutes? Were you thinking the regular meeting, or did you have a comment about PERS?
A question for the management.
Yeah. Tony?
Tony, I've heard that the special bus.
Oh, you know what? So what we'll do is we'll adjourn this work
Oh, okay.
session. Yeah, we'll go ahead and adjourn this work session, and then we'll be back for the regular meeting in 9 minutes. So thank you for your help today, both of you on the phone. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Oh, I'll see.
testimony again for the public hearing, but it's actually, when I reviewed it, does not apply to the public hearing item tonight. Excuse me, so I'll read it for citizen comments.
Okay, thank you.
It's a letter from Carl and John Hughes.
Oh,
That is,
I think
It's on the agenda.
somewhat, it does somewhat apply to that public hearing.
Actually, well, in my research, the site that they're referencing, 1302C 4th Avenue, is specific to their business.
Okay. As long as it gets read into the record. If that's your determination,
I can
then-
hold it for public hearing if that's the
Yeah,
preference.
let's have it be as part of the public hearing.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Next citizen comment is from Casey Warner. My name is Casey Warner and I reside inside city limits. I am submitting a letter tonight as chair of Happy Youth Programs and Educational Resources. I would like to comment on the agenda item under other new business item line number 5. I presented to City Council on March 8th on the efforts of HYPER to address the early childhood care need in our community. At that time, City Council referred my presentation to PACCAB, which I presented to them on April 7th. On May 5th, PACCAB made a motion to recommend City Council support the efforts of HYPER in addressing this much-needed resource. It has come to light that the city will be receiving $1 million from Norwegian Cruise Lines to be used at the discretion of City Council. I feel the best public use of the funds is to support local efforts to address early childhood care the early childhood care issue. I would like to ask City Council refer HYPER to City Administration so that we can present our strategic and business plan. Thank you for your time and dedication to Seward.
Thank you.
And then next, we have signed in Linda Paquette.
Thank you.
Ooh, my tongue's out.
Wow, when's the last time I did this?
That's exciting.
Whoa. Linda Paquette, outside the city limits. I just wanted to get on record, I know I said it in the work session, but I can't believe that there are no copies of those 3 studies available. I think there are 3 council members now that were on council when those studies were distributed. And as I recall, everybody got a copy. So in addition to the ones that are not in the vault, I would hope that maybe one of you guys would have a copy of even just one of them would be nice. There was a lot of money spent. That was like, they ranged between $50,000 and $75,000 per study. So you're looking at $150,000 that got spent, and you don't have that, you don't have those resources in front of you. Because those studies still fly. The lagoon hasn't changed. There are some things about the way the lagoon operates that have changed, but a lot of what was in those studies would be helpful to have. So I know in the work session, one of the comments was, you know, maybe the $50,000 is for a study of maybe its capacity. It wouldn't be bad. If you do a study though, the entire community would ask that you use someone other than who you used in all those studies, because we ended up anaerobic for 2 years under the tutelage of that consultant. So I really think that's enough to make it pretty clear that you should get a second opinion from somebody else at this point. And if you want to see the page, I mean, I know I've given copies to the mayor and to other council members, but if you want to see the pages, copies of the pages where he talks about, in the one copy that I have, about it being too small, you know, I'm happy to provide those. But I really do think, because there are infrastructure programs coming out of the feds, I think we have to belly up to this and embrace this idea that you need another facility somewhere to supplement what's going on there. And you know, sludge removal, I mean, I'm like, whoa, they've got sludge removal on the agenda, or on the priority list. That's amazing, right? I'm really happy about that. But that isn't going to solve the problem. And you don't, some of you won't be here 20 years from now, sitting on the council, but I don't think for your legacy you want to leave this as something that every council for the next 20 years is going to have to deal with. So thank you for your time, and it's great to see all your smiles.
Thank you. Okay, next signed in is Maureen Sheehan.
About the shovel, and the bus driver was a young kid, and he didn't know where the signs for stops. And the lady got mad and said, "You don't know the signs, where's the stop?" And the kid said, "Hey, I'm new, you know, so out of that, you guys gonna have a lot of people coming off complaining." And it has to be done. Years, I mean, the boss one time for the shuttle made clear who was driving the bus always have the signs where to stop, always. What's wrong this year? What's going on? So, unless you want to have people complain.
Great, thank you.
And that is it, Madam Mayor.
Great, thank you. Next on the agenda is the approval of the agenda and consent agenda. I'm looking for a motion and a second.
I move for the approval of the agenda and consent agenda.
I second it.
Great, I'm gonna kick off with a couple changes. If we could get resolution 2021-061 off the consent agenda, there's a substitute resolution to review. 2021-063 off the consent agenda. And then the last thing we need to take off the consent agenda is you'll notice under informational items and reports, included in our packet was the April 2021 city financials. So the Providence financials were emailed to council in a board format, and those are available to the public through the clerk's office, but we're taking that off the agenda since it wasn't included in the packet. And then I'll just try one more thing and see if I can get resolution 2021-062 on the consent agenda. Seeing no objections, and then I'll look around and see if there's any other changes to the agenda. Yes?
I would like to put on the consent agenda, resolution 2021-059.
So since that's a public hearing, it can't be on the consent agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for checking on that one. Any other comments? Madam Clerk, can we call for a vote, please?
Yes. Voting on tonight's agenda and consent agenda as amended. Bosenga?
Yes.
McClure?
Yes.
Casagrande?
Yes.
Demas?
Yes.
Cease?
Yes.
Buckland?
Yes.
Mayor Terry?
Yes.
Your agenda and consent agenda are approved. And approved on tonight's consent agenda. Bear with me one moment. Resolution 2021-060, authorizing signatures for all city bank accounts and rescinding all previous resolutions in conflict herewith. Resolution 21-062, authorizing the city manager to purchase a 2022 Chevy 3500 4x4 regular cab truck with flatbed, hidden lift gate, and feed plow for the Harbor Department, waiving competitive procurement procedures in order to utilize the state of Alaska's procurement contract in an amount not to exceed $59,549.55. The approval of the May 10th, 2021 City Council regular meeting minutes. And you have a non-objection to the renewal of liquor license for Chattermark Restaurant Eating Place Public Convenience Seasonal number 5040, and the renewal of liquor license for Woody's Thai Kitchen Restaurant Eating Place Public Convenience Seasonal number 5239. And you have reappointed Marianne Benoit to the Historic Preservation Commission with a term to expire May 2024.
Great, thank you. Next on the agenda is proclamations and awards, and I'm going to stand over to the podium and I'll call those up. You guys thought I was running away.
Yeah.
Well, first up is Liberty Miller. Yay, so nice to see you. So whereas the Seward Historic Preservation Award is presented annually to recognize individuals, groups, or organizations whose efforts and contributions help preserve Seward's history and heritage, whereas Liberty Miller, owner of 13 Ravens Coffee and Books, organized and planned a new historical cemetery walking tour at Woodlawn Cemetery in Camelot Subdivision on October 10th and 24th, 2020. Whereas Liberty collaborated with Sue McClure and Lee Pileski, both of whom have extensive experience organizing cemetery tours in the city, to gather info and lead the tours and share many fascinating stories of those laid to rest in the Woodlawn Cemetery. Whereas many individuals from near and far attended this event and tours sold out quickly. Whereas all proceeds were donated to the Resurrection Bay Historical Society. And whereas this walking tour provided the citizens of Seward an opportunity to come together in an outdoor event to learn about and to share Seward's history in the middle of a global COVID-19 pandemic. Whereas these cemetery tours were also the impetus for the city to replace the long-lost headstone of Mary Lowell to commemorate an original Seward homesteader and influential matriarch. And whereas the success of the Woodlawn Cemetery tours has inspired future walking tours and events, which the community eagerly anticipates. And whereas in appreciation and recognition of Liberty Miller's enthusiastic and innovative contribution to the education of Seward's history, by bringing community together and sparking renewed interest in local history, the City of Seward is pleased to present the 2021 Historic Preservation Award to Liberty Miller. For her dedication and commitment to preserving Seward's history. So I will let you say a few words.
All right. Well, these October cemetery tours came about because I love Halloween and history. And I figured after a very bizarre summer last year, the Seward locals could use something fun to do before winter set in. But the tours ended up extending beyond Seward. We had numerous people drive down from the valley to attend. And like Mayor Terry said, Mary Lowell's headstone is being replaced now, which was a very unexpected and wonderful outcome. And of course, I need to thank Sue McClure and Lee Pileski for immediately being on board when I asked them if they would guide the tours. And thank you to Emily, who works with me at the coffee shop, for all the long hours she spent in the cold at the cemetery, serving hot drinks and cookies. Thank you to everyone who bought a ticket. The proceeds went to the Historical Society. And thank you for this award. I'm truly honored. Thank you.
And then, since this is a super fun part of my job, Colleen Kelly. So, whereas the Seward Historic Preservation Award is presented annually to recognize an individual or organization whose efforts and contributions help preserve the tangible aspects of Seward's history and heritage. Whereas in 2020, the Seward Historic Preservation Commission was awarded the HPF CLG grant Seward Historical Tour Public Education Signage Project to install interpretive signs to highlight historical sites of interest for a walking tour to be completed in June 30th, 2021. And whereas Colleen Kelly, a volunteer member of the Resurrection Bay Historical Society Collection Committee, met with the commissioners to research properties, find photos, documents, and all records, and all organized into individual files, and uploaded over 100 photos to a shared file for easy access to the commission and sign designer. And whereas Colleen rescanned many images at a higher resolution to improve image production and worked weekends to help meet tight deadlines and scan other photos for the project that were not part of the Resurrection Bay Historical Society collection. And whereas Colleen provided a total of 52 document reviews with detailed edits, I'm getting tired just reading all of these. With detailed edits, with so much work, detailed edits for the signed narratives, and reviewed each of them for historical accuracy, which dramatically improved the quality of the narratives from the initial stage to the final stage of the sign design process. And whereas Colleen shared her wealth of knowledge about the history of Seward to develop signed narratives and was responsive as the stories developed and changed direction or needed different images. Whereas Colleen Kelly volunteered extensively of her time and expertise and facilitated connections to assist with and ensure the success of the Seward Historic Walking Tour Grant Project. Whereas in appreciation and recognition of Colleen Kelly's volunteerism and distinction in this and all other respects over the course of her tenure with the Resurrection Bay Historical Society, the City of Seward is pleased to present the 2021 Historical Preservation Award to Colleen Kelly. For her dedication and commitment to preserving Seward's history. That sounded like you were busy.
Yeah, right.
And I'll let you say a few words. That's amazing.
Thank you to Council and Mayor Terry and Historic Preservation Commission. I think all of us had fun in the sign project. And I hope everyone enjoys taking a walk later this summer. It's really a load of information, and it's great to be in a town that cares for its history. Join the Historical Society. We have a website with a membership form.
And then did you want to say something?
Yes, my name is Cheryl Cease. I'm the chair for the Seward Historic Preservation Commission. I just wanted to add, Colleen has been working behind the scenes for years, for many, many projects, and stays out of view. So this is really wonderful that she's finally being recognized.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much. Next on the agenda is Combat Fishing Tournament Proclamation. Do I have anyone here for that? Well, I'm just going to go ahead and read it anyways. And I don't know how many of you know about that Combat Fishing Tournament because they leave awful early in the morning and it's been going on for many years. So Seward is home to the only military recreation camps in Alaska and hosts thousands of military service members and their families each year. And whereas the annual Armed Service Combat Fishing Tournament was founded in 2006 by Seward businessman Bob Kendopoulos, owner of Saltwater Safari Company, and event partner Keith Maturnak of Specialty Truck and Auto Inc. And whereas the purpose of this fishing tournament is to give thanks to the brave young men and women of the United States Armed Services who have served our nation with honor and courage in Iraq and Afghanistan. And whereas over the past 15 years, the Armed Services Fishing Tournament became the largest military appreciation fishing tournament in the United States, with a total of 2,914 military veterans and 326 professional fishing charters participating in this tournament. And whereas the 15th annual Combat Fishing Tournament will be held this Wednesday, May 26, 2021. Now therefore, I, Christy Terry, Mayor of the City of Seward, do hereby congratulate Bob Kendopoulos, Keith Maturnak, and the Armed Services YMCA on celebrating their 15th annual Combat Fishing Tournament. It's amazing how many volunteers we have in this community doing so many things, so thank you definitely to those folks. Next is poppies. Are you thanking them so much? Yay, thank you. You're welcome. So whereas America is the land of the free, preserved and protected willingly and freely by citizen soldiers, and whereas millions who have answered the call to arms have died in the field of battle, and whereas a nation at peace must be reminded of the price of war and the debt owed to those who have died in war, and whereas at the end of World War I, the American Legion adopted the poppy as a symbol of freedom and the blood sacrifice of the soldiers of war, and whereas the symbolic use of the poppy comes from the poem In Flanders Fields, which movingly begins, in Flanders fields the poppies blow, between the crosses, row on row, referring to the poppies that sprung up in the churned up earth of the newly dug soldier's grave over parts of Belgium and France. And whereas the American Legion designated the red poppy as its official flower, symbolizing the blood shed by our soldiers who served in our U.S. military and found it fitting to expand the meaning and symbolism as the poppy as they celebrate their 100th anniversary. Now, therefore, I, Christy Terry, Mayor of the City of Seward, do hereby proclaim May 28, 2021 as National Poppy Day and encourage everyone to honor every service member who died in the name of liberty, freedom, and democracy, while also showing their support for living veterans, service members, and their families. And I want to give you this proclamation. Thank you.
This coming Monday, there will be a ceremony at the American Legion Region Cemetery, which is right behind the Chamber of Commerce. It will start shortly after 11 to allow for the train to blow its whistle. And we encourage the public to attend. It's a really beautiful ceremony, and the Flanders Field poem will be read there. As part of the history of Seward, the American Legion was formed in 1919, and Seward Post 5 was given its charter in December of 1919. So we are one of the oldest in the United States. The American Legion Auxiliary had their charter in August of 1923. Again, one of the oldest in the United States. So there's a lot to be proud of here in Seward. I really hope we'll see a bunch of these faces here and out in the public to attend on Monday at 11 o'clock. Thank you.
And the last proclamation for today is Older American Proclamation. The population of Seward includes a growing number of older Alaskans who have built strength through their accomplishments and resilience through overcoming obstacles. And whereas Seward benefits from individuals of all ages, abilities, and backgrounds sharing their stories of success and resilience. And whereas Seward recognizes the need to nurture themselves, reinforce their strengths, and continues to thrive in both joy and struggles. And whereas Seward can foster a community of strength by creating opportunities to share stories and learn from each other, engaging older adults through education, recreation, and service, and encouraging individuals of all ages to celebrate their accomplishments and learn from their struggles. Now therefore I, Christy Terry, Mayor of the City of Seward, do hereby proclaim May 2021 as Older Americans Month and urge all citizens to recognize older Americans and community volunteers as valuable members of our community. And we'll make sure that the Senior Center gets that. Thank you. Next on the agenda, we have the City Manager's Report, and I'll turn it over to administration.
All right.
Turn it over to Steve.
So a couple things. One, as far as charges between $5,000 and $30,000, administration's providing a recap below on the bottom of page 9. In the harbor, the 84-inch angle broom for use in the harbor and the SMIC was $7,410. For their sewer, which you guys are all aware of, the Low Point liner repairs, $8,500. In the electric department, unit heater installation in the electric department warehouse was $9,966. In the police department, computer to record all the phone and radio conversations in the department, that was $22,416.80. And lastly, again, for the Low Point Lagoon liner repairs, $23,500. The only other item of note, just to call out, during our last council meeting 2 weeks ago, council had requested we provide some information on campground utilization, and that's found on the middle of page 13. So just to call out for you guys where we're at year to date, and we'll be in a habit just as a good economic indicator to continue to update council in that regard. That's the only items of note that I had for you tonight.
Great, thank you. And just for the public, I'll go ahead and maybe have you introduce yourself just quickly because the public can see you on the...
I'm Jeanette Bauer, and I'm happy to be here in Seward. Relocated from Minnesota, so I'm very happy to be back to Alaska. And I'm enjoying my time
Happy to
here.
have you. Thank you. And I'll look to the dais and see if there's questions for administration. Councilmember Cascarande?
I have 3 questions. The first one is, can you guys, I know summer's getting started. There's a lot of people that are coming to visit, either to occupy their land temporarily within city limits or visiting friends within city limits. Can you give the public a rundown on in-town RV parking on private property per code? Is there a 2-week period that you can camp on someone's property?
I will definitely follow back up with everybody on that. I couldn't tell you right off the top of my head. I apologize.
Okay. I remember we were discussing something years back and I can't remember. So if we can just give a
a shout out so that people are aware of what the code is, just because it's the beginning of summer, and with our new RV rates gone up, I think we want to make sure that people are just aware of the code.
And maybe that could be on Community Development's webpage, or have the information get distributed in the next council package.
Sure.
Or, okay.
Sure.
Go ahead, Councilmember Cascarandi.
Is there any way, I hate to stir up or beat a dead horse or bring back a haunting past, but is there any way that in the city manager's report, until we get the lagoon under control, that we can have reports how many dispatch calls are received for the Low Point Lagoon? I know when it got nasty last time, that was just our way of council to become aware. I mean, it doesn't have to be verbally spoke, but can it just be put in our packet, how many calls of complaints there are on the smell?
Sure.
And then did you want to go ahead with your third?
Yeah, and then my third, it's more of a comment for Miss Sheehan's comment. I wanted to address her concern about the bus stops and the bus signs. And I know with past administration, when Ron and Jim were here, Ron and I specifically were brainstorming or talking about the idea of some really neat benches with like signs and maybe even like an umbrella to make the bus stops a little bit more showy and more apparent. I know the one bus stop that I see, it's literally a little tiny sign, and a lot of times if the owner doesn't upkeep the land, it just doesn't even look like anything. So I don't know. I know we're short on funds for all of that this year, but maybe in the future when we start getting cruise ships back, that's something that we could explore. Catalyst Marine, we have great welders here in town, and maybe we could get some creative or something.
Yeah, good comments. I might just jump off of that since to that topic. If we could just check with that contractor and make sure that he's aware that the drivers just need some more education, and to look at, I think the city's in charge of signage, just to make sure that the signage is adequate. And then Councilmember DeMoss, I jumped in front of you, sorry.
Oh yeah, no, that's okay. I just had one question, not regarding the shuttles, but I thought of, I wanted to follow up on the gardening issue or position. Is there a gardening position? And if there's not, who is maintaining the garden beds?
So based on public feedback, that position we are advertising for. And as soon as we get a candidate that applies, we'll be hiring. It's listed in the available seasonal positions on the bottom of page 10.
And then can you just verify that the beds will be maintained until that position is filled?
Yes.
Thank you. That's all.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments specific to the manager's report? Right, I do just want to say, I think they're getting more and more thorough with good information, not just like a lot of information, just helpful information, so I want to thank you for that. Next on the agenda is other reports, announcements, Chamber of Commerce report, and I did see in his report he's not able to join us, and that starts on page 19. So I think if there's any questions, we'll reach out to the chamber director or to coordinate with the clerk and get him any questions, but that is included in our packet. We have no presentations this evening. Next on the agenda are public hearings. Resolutions requiring a public hearing, Resolution 2021-059. Madam Clerk, could you read that into the agenda, please?
Resolution 2021-059 is authorizing the city manager to enter into a lease agreement with amendment with Richard and Linda Warble to remove Article 14.2C from lease 97-106 and to amend lease 97-102 and 97-104 by also removing Article 14.2C.
And I need a motion and a second.
I move for the approval of Resolution 2021-059.
I'll second it.
And so to begin with, we'll just let you do a quick presentation, and then we'll hold questions, public hearing, and then we'll go back. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So Mrs. Warble contacted Harbor. I handled most of all the leases. Mrs. Warble contacted me and said she wanted to sublease her building. So I said, okay, I'll look at her file. So I looked in her file, and under 14C, there's a thing in there that
says she has to present the city 35% of her sublease amount. So if you do know leases, I haven't seen that. I know it wasn't in the new lease agreement that was made by past attorneys in 2013 when they redid it all. It was not in there. And so I told her that, and then she talked it over, and Mr. Wolf came and talked to me about it, and that's how it wasn't fair because the other people didn't have it. So I went and looked at all the other leases. There's only 3 leases in the city that have it. 2 were redone here a few years back, and it was never put back in. I didn't know it was there. So so I bring this before you to remove that 14C from their lease and the other 2 leases that have, which is, I believe there's a thing from Mr. Hughes and then from Connector Tours.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments before we go to the public hearing? Okay. I'll open up the public hearing and I'll turn to the clerk. I know we have, let's do the one submitted comment and then we'll do if someone's signed up to make comments.
Okay, so the one written comment from Carl and John Hughes is, Dear Madam Mayor and council members, I write this letter in hopes that you will vacate and remove Section C in Article 14.2 of the lease agreement for the above location. This article is part of the sublease clause of the lease agreement. Please refer to the attached pages referencing subleasing from our lease agreement with the City of Seward. The section I am referring to is marked with a yellow highlight. It has come to our attention that of the 6 small boardwalk lease sites next to the Harbor Master's office, there are only 3 such leases that have this clause. All of the others have had this section removed from their lease agreements with the city. This includes Major Marine Tours, the renowned Charter Building, and Coco Joe's. We should all be on a fair and equitable footing in reference to these lease sites. So I am requesting that you remove this item from our lease agreement with a signed and recorded addendum or create a new copy of the lease agreement with this item removed. As the longest owned original leaseholder, I would appreciate this consideration. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And there were no other submitted written comments?
No, ma'am.
And then is anyone signed in to speak at the public hearing?
No, ma'am. Oh, well,
No, ma'am.
no.
Is there anyone that would like to speak at the public hearing? Okay, with that, I will close the public hearing, and then I'll turn it to council if there's any questions for administration. Any discussion or questions?
Just clarification, so this particular resolution just refers to the warbles?
No.
No,
But it will include all.
In the sections that below the
That-
other
that
2, I just
those
didn't name
numbers.
the individuals in
Thank
there.
you, okay, that was it.
Okay, perfect. Any other questions or comments? Madam Clerk, if we could call for the vote, please.
Voting on the approval of Resolution 2021-059. Casagrande?
Yes.
Buckland?
Yes.
McClure?
Yes.
Osenga?
Yes.
Cease?
Yes.
DeMoss?
Yes.
Mayor Terry?
Yes.
That resolution is approved.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is Resolution 2021-061. Madam Clerk, if you could read the title into the minutes.
Resolution 2021-061 is accepting grant funds from the State of Alaska Historic Preservation Fund, Amendment Number 1, in the amount of $5,235 with a required match of $410 for the fiscal year 2020, Certified Local Government Grant Number 20005, Seward Historical Tour Public Education Signage Project on behalf of the Seward Historical Preservation Commission and appropriating funds.
Thank you. And we're looking for a motion and a second.
I move for the approval of Resolution 2021-061.
I'll second.
Thank you. And I will turn over to administration. Maybe I'll let you present on this, and it looks like we have a substitute resolution before us to adopt. So I don't know what would be easier. We'll turn it over to administration first.
So just to explain it in a nutshell, the amendment, this is actually the second amendment. I wrote a resolution for the first amendment. And the State Historic Preservation Office, who we refer to as SHPO, had submitted one, did we just get it on Monday? It was just this Monday. So I recommended rewriting the resolution. But essentially what it does is it increases the overall amount of the grant to the highest level of $40,000. And the 40% match of the city is $16,000, and that will be covered in full by the commission's volunteer hours, which to date is over 900 hours. And I haven't even finished counting all of April yet. I still have to get some April hours in there. I mean, just that alone is valued at over $27,000. So we're very well in the clear for our part of it. The 60% federal match is $24,000, and that is cash to the city to cover for expenses. And in support of this project, SHPO has also removed the 8.5% indirect cost that we would normally pay for the grant, because it's federal monies. So it's just a flat change with the 40 and the 60%.
Thank you. I'll move to adopt the laydown substitute resolution for 2021-061 that was provided on the dais for us today.
I'll second that.
So now we're discussing the lay.
Cease,
Yes.
Casagrande,
Yes.
Buckland,
Yes.
Demas,
Yes.
McClure,
Yes.
Osenga,
Yes.
Mayor Terry.
Yes.
You have approved the substitute version.
Now, Madam Clerk, just to clarify, do we need to again adopt 2021-061, or are we done at this point?
No further changes?
No
I
further
think we can be done with that.
Okay. So that adopts it in full.
Yeah.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is Resolution 2021-063, authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with Dibble Creek Limited for rock removal at the city's 4th of July Creek Rock Quarry. I didn't even throw it over to the Madam Clerk, but I do need to pass, before we have a motion and a second, I need to pass the gavel and just say that the railroad did procure the rock in question.
Still have those options for our quarry, that we can run that through a contractor who takes over. We still can do other things with our own out there, but they would take over, and any sales out of that would go through that contractor as the manager of the quarry. And they would then pay us our $5 royalty per ton. So anything that leaves the gate, we get paid the $5 a ton on. This is very similar to what that was. I did include an older resolution from 2003 that did set the price at that, and it's been, over the years, used that same price. There's been a few deals where they made some rock for our harbor and traded that out in their fee. So there's been some different things. This one's pretty straightforward. The only catch on the one, we have we call it a reject pile, but it's kind of a pit run pile, a large pile that we don't really use for much. It's taking up a lot of space out there. And that's what we put in for the $3.50 per ton, so we can get it utilized. And that's part of what Norm was talking about, going out over the dock over there. They're doing a gravel thing they're working on. Not only we're working through this railroad one, but hopefully we'll go through that too and put gravel out, which will go on barge to Bethel.
Nice.
So some things that are kind of exciting, and this was more of a revenue. We're looking at one cost we're gonna have coming up is bringing electric over from the wastewater treatment plant over there at SMIC and bringing a line across so we can power our scale out there and get a much more accurate count of everything coming and going. Right now, we're running it on a generator, or the contractor is, and providing scale tickets. So it's really a good thing. It's something that's coming up right now, and I don't know that it's a huge thing coming up for future, but it's something that helps. Everything that helps us go on out there, and it's been it's kind of a shutdown for a little bit. We don't have a lot out there further to go unless we really get into the bench where, what do we want to do? So this overlay kind of comes into play that. But with where we're at right behind the prison, we've got still some rock that we can produce in. And this has been a perfect thing in conjunction with the contractors who bid out to the railroad to make this ballast rock, which goes underneath the railroad ties. And so that's what they'll run through that, and then hopefully some other things. We've done some minor sales out of there, but nothing that we're really starting to get some management going in there.
Great, thank you.
The
Vice Mayor?
money that the money that is brought in from this, does that go to the general fund?
Yes, it does.
Thank you.
And so I'll come back to you for some of that for the electric, so I'll have to say I need some out of that to get the electric.
Councilmember Mendel.
Yeah, I just have a quick question because several citizens called me and I know they're confused. I just want you to verify that the quarry that's out past the transfer station is the Burrows
That's
rock.
correct. Yeah, that.
It is the
Out by
Burrows
the
rock
dump is
quarry.
the Burrows quarry, they have a little one out
I
on the
wanted to get it
outside.
from higher authority
Right,
than that.
ours is out behind Smith, if you go out behind, it's got a gate on it, you can't just drive in there, but it's right out behind the prison.
I think newer people were confused.
Yeah, good clarification. Are there any other questions? Councilmember Casagrande?
Just a comment that I'd like to say thank you that this was put before our attorney for review, because I know the quarry has had some issues in the past, so I just appreciate that that was covered, so thank you.
Great. I think we're ready for a vote, Madam Clerk.
Voting on the approval of resolution 2021-063, Osenga,
Yes.
Cease,
Yes.
Buckhorn,
Yes.
Casagrande,
Yes.
Demas,
Yes.
McClure,
Yes.
Mayor Terry.
Yes.
That resolution is approved.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is discuss options for best public use of $1 million in funding from the Norwegian Cruise Lines. And that you can find on page 161. And before I turn it over to administration, I might just say, I'm sure we'll follow up with a thank you note on what we ultimately decide to do with this money, but maybe in the interim, council can send a thank you to NCL, because there were not many communities in Alaska that receive funding, and we're the only community outside of the southeast. So maybe if we could send a thank you note, letting them know that we'll update them on the final use of the funds, but that we very much appreciate it. And now I'll turn it over to administration.
So I had a chance to speak with Steve Moeller, who is the government relations representative from Norwegian Cruise Lines, and I emailed council just a recap of that conversation as well. They're pleased to be able to provide to that. Just to reiterate what Mary Terry said to us, we're the only community outside of Southeast to get that, and I think it just demonstrates an acknowledgement and a recognition of what Seward means to the cruising industry in South Central Alaska. The first question that I asked Norwegian was if they had a preference for how these monies would be used. Most of the time when they do these types of programs, it's in response to a hurricane or an otherwise natural disaster, typically in the Caribbean or something of that sort. This is a bit of an anomaly, as with all things COVID, but essentially the two asks that they had was that the determination be made by this body. They feel like locally elected leaders are in the best position. They had a lot of boardroom conversations about, do they dictate or decide how these funds should be used, and they, right from their CEO, they said, we want the power to reside at local city councils on how to use this, because you guys are most in tune with what's going on in the community. The second ask was that they would have, that this would be used to have long-range, impactful meaning to our business community in a responsive way. So they don't want it to be something that's just going to be short-term, but their preference would really be that these funds be used in a capacity that benefit our businesses in COVID recovery long-term and helps the entirety of the community. Beyond that, they didn't want to provide any more specific information. I think I told council previously that these funds were not expected to arrive. They were pretty tight-lipped about when, but the $1 million hit our bank account on Wednesday morning.
Wow.
So not to say that, I don't want that to come across like council needs to decide how to use those funds right now. You guys can deliberate and be thoughtful about how to use those, but as soon as you make a determination the funds are available to be spent. So I think that's all I've got.
Thank you. Councilmember McClure.
I think this is something that we should have a work session with public input on, rather than just a discussion tonight. I mean, we could start, but I think it would require a little more in-depth, where we could
Reach out.
spend a little bit more time, and with the public knowing that we're about to do that. So if we could maybe, I mean, we can talk tonight, but I'd like to see a work session on this, because it's important.
Councilmember Cease?
I think one of the places that would be very good is for a healthcare center, for a daycare center for our kids. There's too many people that don't have anybody to take care of their children, and they're hurting for their jobs. And I think that that's one place that I hope we discuss if we have that meeting.
Councilmember Demas?
I think a work session is important to get public input, but I think that we'll get a lot of public input, and so I want it to be productive and for us to be able to maybe focus on just a few specific ideas.
Well, to that point, I think if we have a few ideas advertised with that work session, then people will know what they're making comments regarding.
Well,
Go ahead.
aside from daycare, I had an idea that with $1 million, how many sidewalks could we fix better in the town, which would certainly help the businesses and the community. We're always having to repair sidewalks, there still are many that need repairing, and that would be a totally other way to look at this. So if we could get some cost estimates on, you know, linear foot sidewalk repairs or like that. I know it's off the wall, but
It's good to look at a few things. Councilmember Casgrande?
If we're going to schedule a work session, which I think we're leaning towards, and I think we're just kind of throwing out there some of the things we'd like to discuss, I'd like to look into the purchase of childcare facility as well, but I would like to take it a step further and ask administration to bring us any information on what it would look like for us to provide a loan for somebody to purchase the building. So not necessarily us purchase it, because the city does not need to own another thing, but just brainstorming, thinking something more like a 0% interest, that it's not the city's building.
Vice Mayor?
I guess I can talk to that at the work session. I'll save that for them.
Councilmember DeMoss?
Just one point that I would like to make is I think it would be important to be able to, whatever we're doing, dedicate it to this gift and just keep that in mind, kind of for the long term, whatever it may be.
So does council want a third option, or?
Throw it out there. Let's see what you got.
I guess maybe I can hold back, and I've had some conversations with the chamber about this, but I'm a little remiss to just throw out another idea without, if it's okay to hold the third suggestion and maybe reach out to the chamber director and generate, based on the feedback of the chamber board, what they're hearing from local businesses that would help. Is that acceptable?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that would be good.
You know, again, I think if we have a couple things specific in the work session, you know, advertisement, not to limit it to that,
Right.
maybe, and say, and other options, but if people don't know what they don't know, if we don't have a couple things out there for them to make comment to, I guess. Councilmember Casgrande?
If we're throwing out, sidewalks might be a small part of it, but also bus stop beautification.
We have bus
There you
stop,
go.
what if that's,
Actually,
yeah.
that would be the time.
Which, I'm sorry.
bus stop,
Oh,
free
okay.
shuttle?
Good idea.
The bus stopping would really go hand in hand with the whole cruise line and dedicate the benches. Good idea, school.
I think that this is, again, a great, great discussion starter, and maybe some of it can be used for seed money.
And
Councilmember?
it is for the public to realize that we're being given $1 million, you know, and so we have the great gift of, or the great duty or burden to try to figure out how best to use it for everyone, so that's what's coming up.
Vice Mayor?
I think looking towards the work session, I like hearing all the different ideas, because I think it's important to have more than one idea. I think that really to stress to the public that the money was given to drive economic development. So any ideas or feedback or comments should be geared to the driving our economy and driving us and moving us forward into the future. Or recovery, yeah.
Yeah. No, I was agreeing with you. Do we want to look at a date for a work session? What, how much time does administration need? Do we want to, our next council meeting is the 14th, and there's already a 5:30 council work session. Do we want to shoot for the 7th, which is in 2 weeks? which is another Monday night.
I'll be out of town that day,
I'm sure you'd like to be there. Do we want to try for that Tuesday, June 8th? I think I have something that night.
Monday's the best day for me because that's the day I have off from work. But other than the weekend, yeah.
I could probably make it work. I could change something around. I could probably make Monday work.
Can we start it earlier, later? Start at 6, start at 7?
Later would work better for me like
If we
6,
start at
yeah.
7, is that too late? 7 on the 7th?
If that's not too late for you guys.
Okay, that's when we start now.
Yeah, start.
Okay.
Let's,
There's only 2 hours.
let's shoot for 7.
We won't get food then.
No, no food.
Sorry.
But we can get ice cream.
And we'll just make sure it's a rainy night so that we.
Exactly.
Does that work for administration, 7 o'clock on the 7th?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Next on the agenda is to schedule a work session, a second work session, which today was very helpful. To schedule a second work session, did I skip something?
The online business license.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, online business. I'll turn it over to the city clerk.
So I outlined in the memo that Dude Solutions, who we entered into a contract with last summer in good faith, has finally come forward and told us that they cannot fulfill their contract on time as they promised. And so now if they can settle their hiring issues for staffing, they're going to push us till March next year, 2022, to get an online business license program. And so an alternative to pursuing and accepting that date would be to pursue looking at another vendor. And the IT director and myself have an appointment on Wednesday for a web demo from Laserfiche, who's the vendor that furnishes our legislative history. And they have other capabilities that we maybe aren't fully aware of. And so we wanted to explore that with council's blessing. I'd like to pursue getting a refund for any of the funds that we've already paid to Dude Solutions, if that is the direction that council wants to go.
So let's check for comments with Councilmember Osenga.
Would we be getting a full refund? Is that what you're thinking?
That would be my expectation.
That's an expectation.
What
Okay.
I would ask for sure. Because they haven't really done any work on our behalf yet. We've done all the work. We've uploaded all the documents, the workflows. We've furnished them with everything. We've spent a lot of time on it, and they haven't started. Thank you. Good question.
She
President?
answered my question.
I'll just jump out in front to say I think it's been plenty of time, and I think it is an even better option if we're able to consolidate with one company on, having those systems match up. So it'd be good to pursue. Does anyone have any objections to that? Great, thank you. Thanks for bringing that before us, even though I tried to skip over it. But next on the agenda is schedule a second work session to discuss the capital improvement plan for June 28th at 5 p.m. Is there any objections to that? I will be on vacation. It's going to be my first council meeting that I miss, so Vice Mayor Baclan, it's going to be all you. So I feel like council is pretty in sync, and I felt like I've had my piece said today, so I trust the rest of the body to provide direction, and then it'll come back to us, I'm sure.
Can you repeat the time?
It's at 5 p.m. on the 28th, so that would be before a council meeting. Is there any objections to that? Do we have unanimous consent on that time and date? Is there anything else you want to add about that work session? Okay. And so maybe if council has any comments or any final thoughts, to bring that to you ahead of time to maybe get in the mix. That sound good? One thing I didn't see on the list anywhere, I guess I'll just have my 2 cents now because I was thinking about it, is this building. We've talked about the thermal envelope of this building. So I mean, I think, again, balancing between what we need moving forward and what we need to maintain, maybe that's something we need to at least get on in the mix of things, so that'd be my only comment. Great, thank you. Next on the agenda is review and approve the Board of Adjustment findings of fact and conclusions of law for the Griswold and the Seaview appeal hearings that were conducted on May 14th, 2021. And I'm going to immediately turn it over to Councilmember Casagrande.
Thank you. I'd like to declare a financial conflict of interest, and if I can go sit on the other side of the dais while you guys discuss this, to be excused, that'd be great.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm just going to rule that you have a previously determined conflict of interest, and we will excuse you to go sit. Make sure that door is unlocked. Okay, so starting on page 165, the findings of fact and conclusions of law are outlined, and I do have some direction before we start to discuss this. I'm going to go ahead and have a motion that I'll be looking for a second. So approve the Board of Adjustments finding of fact and conclusions of law for the Griswold appeal hearing that was conducted on May 14th, 2021. And if I get a second?
I'll second.
And you'll just notice that I just said the first of two. So we'll be doing two motions, one for each of the appeal hearings that we did conduct. So is there any further discussion, or should we just go ahead and call for a vote? Madam Clerk, let's call for a vote, please.
Okay, voting on the approval of the findings for the Griswold appeal. Cease.
Yes.
DeMoss.
Yes.
Osenga.
Yes.
Bachland.
Yes.
McClure.
Yes.
Mayor Terry.
Yes.
Those findings are approved.
And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make a motion to approve the Board of Adjustment finding of fact and conclusions of law for the Seaview appeal hearing that was conducted on May 14th, 2021, and I'll look for a second.
I'll second that.
And then is there any discussion regarding those findings of fact? Madam Clerk, I'll have you call for a vote, please.
Voting on the approval of the Seaview findings. Cease.
Yes.
Bachland.
Yes.
McClure.
Yes.
DeMoss.
Yes.
Osenga.
Yes.
Mayor Terry.
Yes.
Thank you. Those findings are approved.
And we'll invite Councilmember Casagrande to give her a second to come back to the dais. Thank you. Next on the agenda, starting on page 175, are the April 2021 city financials. Are there any questions to administration with those informational items? Go ahead.
Now that we have the Providence financials, and I know that was just like the reporting to the board, do we have an update on maybe when we'll get the finals so that we get the budget back, the finals?
Audit? Oh, the audit?
Yeah, the audit, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's fine.
I don't have any updated information yet on from the auditor, when that'll be back. So,
Weren't they gonna come back and make a presentation in June? So
Correct.
is that at the first or the second meeting, do you know?
I think it's the June 28th meeting.
And then, also in the packet, informational items and reports, is the city clerk provided her travel report and also her certifications, earned from FEMA. Does council have any questions for the clerk?
I have one.
Councilmember Cease?
I think you misspoken. It's Grand Rapids, Michigan, not Maryland.
Did I put Maryland?
Yeah.
No.
It's
I sure did.
She went to, because we talked about the hotel and everything. She loves
Sorry,
Grand Rapids.
it was Michigan.
Okay. You see, I read it.
Good catch. And great job on your FEMA certification. Thank you, Madam Clerk. And then, next on the agenda is citizen comments. Is anyone signed in for citizen comments?
Indeed, yes. We have two people signed in, and one is a phone call out. We will call Carol Griswold.
Thank you.
Hello, this is Carol.
Hi Carol, you are with City Council and you have 5 minutes for citizen comments.
Thank you. Carol Griswold, Inside City Limits. The Board of Adjustment's erroneous finding that recovery housing is residential substance abuse treatment is the same use as multifamily dwelling opens the door to permitting recovery housing in any dwelling, apartments, condominiums, mobile homes, modular homes, single-family, duplex, and multiple family. Was that the intent? We have no definitions or land use plan for behavioral health treatment uses. As many public and commissioners suggested, the community needs to address this omission and decide where these uses fit in our community and code. None of my concerns were addressed except for parking, and even that was deeply flawed. Although the erroneous calculation for the fourplex was addressed, I do not understand why parking for the MAT clinic and the 24/7 staff was not required. As noted in my written statement, 10 off-street parking spaces are required for the apartments, another 3 for the clinic, and another 2 to 3 for the 24/7 on-site support staff, for a total of 15 to 16 off-street parking spaces. The submitted parking plan violates code requirements for minimum dimensions of off-street parking spaces, traffic aisle widths, and off-street maneuvering area. The cramped parking plan that blocks in vehicles is illegal. Try that at Safeway. The community development director erred in saying, or they could park in front. The front parking area is in the public right-of-way and is not off-street parking. Obviously, conditional use permits are not enforced. The 2019 CUP requiring 9 off-street parking places in the rear of the building has never had a guest park there. Indeed, there is no room as it is plugged with the same connex, trailer, and fence as before. The expansion of a non-conforming building with the addition of the carport and a covered walkway also violates code. The ignorance of ADA parking requirements was particularly appalling. The CDD initially responded that there is no requirement in our code for ADA parking. No wonder the city is so far behind in complying with the 1990 ADA requirements. ADA parking should be on the consistency checklist for every resolution and ordinance. I repeatedly requested the rules of procedures for appeal hearings from the clerk. Because the city doesn't seem to have this basic document, the attorney had to be consulted just about every step of the way. The city could save a lot in legal fees by providing clear guidance, and everyone would benefit. The Board of Adjustment erred by finding that the Community Development Director and the Commission exercised particularized expertise regarding planning and zoning matters. If you attempted to follow the public hearing and discussion, or tried to read the transcript, you would know that very little expertise was demonstrated as they all struggled with this unlisted use. I had never heard the term shoehorn used, or so often. More training on our code is required at all levels. The Commission did not decide that recovery housing was consistent with the definition of a multiple family dwelling. The most closely analogous code applied to housing, not dwellings, and was not a reasonable basis. The Commission was so uncomfortable they voted unanimously to add condition H to ensure accountability. Removing this condition negates the Commission's intent. Finally, our code needs to update its conflict of interest code. The Commission chair did not declare a potential conflict of interest. Her daughter testified as a member of the CU Board of Directors. What standards were applied to find no bias or conflict of interest for a former member of the CU Board of Directors who served for 20 years before retiring in 2016? It's way past time to address the unlisted uses of behavioral health treatment, code enforcement, and training of our commissioners, council, and staff. Let's get started now. Thank you. Carol Griswold, Inside City Limits.
Thank you, Carol.
Goodbye.
Okay, next is Sienna Caruso, and we're going to call her. I will advise council that you should not respond to any appeal hearing comments.
Please dial
Hi Sienna, you are with City Council and you have 5 minutes for citizen comments.
Hi, thank you so much for your, actually, let me just take a step back. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sienna Crusoe, and I'm the attorney for TV Community Services. I just want to take this opportunity to thank the City Council in sitting in their capacity as the Board of Adjustments for their time and diligence to the two appeal matters related to CVU Community Services and their conditional use permit. So thank you so much for your time and diligence. It is incredibly appreciated. That's all I have.
Thank you, Sienna.
Thank you so much.
And Madam Clerk, has anyone else
I don't
been
have-
asked to call or written
No,
comments?
I don't have anyone else.
Thank you. I'll turn to the public. Linda?
Want me over there?
Yes, please.
Liberty Cat outside city limits. So I'm really thankful to Councilmember Casagrande for bringing up the calling into dispatch. So we need a refresher for everybody, including the people in dispatch, because Sue Lang called into dispatch last week to report the odors and received a lecture that she should be calling Doug directly. So just to remind everybody here, because some of you weren't on council, when things were bad back in the day, the community was receiving a lot of gaslighting from administration about what was happening. And the council at the time asked for the community to call to dispatch to report the odors so that you could keep track. So before the end of the evening, maybe someone can speak to, are we all on the same page or not? Because the plan at this point for the community, because it is summer now, and people are checking out early, people are asking for refunds, people are complaining. I mean, I was standing there yesterday on this beautiful Sunday day in the afternoon, talking to a customer outside, and all of a sudden the wind shifted, and we both almost threw up. And then the wind shifted again after a few minutes, and we went back to being okay. But in the evenings and in the mornings, like I didn't call it in last night, but when I went into the bedroom at 11 o'clock to go to bed, I had to shut the window because the bedroom stunk so bad. I got reports while I've been sitting here from people that can't sit on their porch outside and have a glass of wine because it stinks so bad out there right now. So I'm hoping that we can put this plan back in place, because what all the lodging people want to do is have a number that their people can call, so that, because it's important that the city understand what's happening out there, right? People are suffering mentally from living with this stench. And yes, it comes and goes, but the people that have lived there all these years, like I said before in the meeting, we have PTSD. When this odor starts to kick back up again, there are people who, they want to go postal. I have people out there now, I'm trying to keep them calm, and it's like, look, let's just, use the process that we've had in place. But, so the lodging people all are going to put the dispatch phone number there and have people, that's the plan anyway. So if that's not what you guys want us to do, if you want us to call some other number, but it's got to be a number that's going to be manned 24 hours a day, because that thing's stinking 24 hours a day. So that's enough about it. I'm glad the mayor brought up replacing City Hall, because I remember back when Bridges was here, that it seemed like it was higher on a list somewhere. But now it really, like replacing City Hall is sort of just like, I haven't heard anybody talking about it. And I feel like in the federal money that's going to be coming, especially towards climate change and, improving infrastructure to not be consuming power, there may be funding that would help build a new City Hall somewhere. So I just hope that administration is kind of on top of that. And then the last thing is just a thought on, not for the north ramp, but for the lagoon, could we look at track deck or something alternative to wood to replace the decking along the lagoon? Just a thought.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to make comments? I'll let Chris, Mrs. Sheehan, you can start. We'll make Norm wait.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank the Board of Adjustment / Council and the city employees that have worked with us through this entire period with our housing that we offer for people with serious mental illness and those in recovery. So I thank you very much for your consideration in removing that discriminatory condition on our recent cup, and much appreciated by myself, the board, and the people that we're serving that are in the program. So deep appreciation for that, and thank you much, and we'll go forward and keep on going. So thank you.
Thank you. Harbor Master Regis.
Norm Regis, live outside city limits. So I want to thank council. The last 6 months, we've worked together a lot. We've done a lot of good things. We always didn't agree, but we continued on working together. So one thing I wish that we could continue is communication with administration, because it really worked out good. You called, we answered, vice versa. So it's really nice. Just keep the communication line open. I think things go a whole lot better, because I saw it. I've been here a long time. I saw it. Stephen's great for responding. You guys know that. So Jeanette's going to be the same way. So just reach out if you need something. Thank you.
Thank you. Good point. Any other comments? Any other public comments? Okay. Next on the agenda is council administration comments. I'll start with administration.
Can you go first?
Sure.
First thing, just to reiterate what Norm said, I just want to thank Norm. He's an awesome resource, and when Norm Regis retires from the city, we will salute. Christy's saying no.
Not allowed.
It's been an amazing experience working with Norm, because he knows everybody and knows the history, and I just want to say thank you. He's a real asset to our organization and the Seward community in so many ways, and I have learned a lot from Norm in the last 6 months, and we'll look forward to continue on working with Norm into the many, many, many years to come. Want to welcome Jeanette as well. It's a pleasure to start day one, and just to echo what Norm said, I feel like we're moving in a really, really positive direction. Since that first meeting in November, I feel like we're getting better and better, and we're working closer and closer as a collaborative team to everybody just improve communication and the way that we're doing things, and I look forward to working with you guys for years to come. Yeah, that's all I've got.
Thank you.
I would say Norm can't retire either. And, part of, through the application process, I've watched the meetings and communicated with both Norm and Stephen. And watching the meetings and watching how you work together to solve issues, that made me want to apply. And I'm looking forward to working together as a team to solve issues and having fun doing it. So thank you. It was a great day, and I'm looking forward to being here.
Great, thank you. I'll start off with you, Councilmember Casagrande.
Awesome. I'd like to welcome Jeanette and thank you, Norm. Stephen, you put it perfectly. Norm is a very valuable person, and you were definitely a blessing in all the transition that happened, and a great segue into the transition that comes. I'm really excited working with administration and this council and what we can do until October. I'd like to give, I think Cheryl left, but the other Cheryl Cease, a huge shout out. I mean, Historic Pres has done so much under her leadership, and I know it takes the whole commission, but she's really stepped up to the plate and really done some phenomenal things in her time there as our chair for Historic Pres. The walking tour is going to be really great. I have to admit, 5 years ago, I had no idea how valuable, economically valuable history is and how it's not just great to preserve for our hearts, but it's also economically a huge stimulus to our community. Congratulations to Brenda for yet another certification and working so hard on behalf of for the citizens of Seward to always find betterment for yourself and for the community. Just going back to administration, I'm not sure if you guys can maybe try to find the studies that Ms. Paquette is referring to, but maybe if we can get like a time period, reaching out to Mr. Lorman, yeah, him. That would be great. Thank you to Carol Griswold for all the great feedback of things that we can improve. Look forward to doing in the future with the city. And I think that is it.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Demas?
Yeah, I want to say welcome, Jeanette. We are so excited to have you. And I think that it's just going to be such a well-rounded council and administration. So I really look forward to working with everybody in that regard. And I also want to thank Norm for just taking over during a stressful time with COVID and transition and new council members and all of it. And you were a dream to have. So thank you so much for everything. And then just one other little thing I wanted to mention, not really little actually, Dr. Hall from the Seward Animal Clinic is retiring, and I just want to say thank you from the community because he was our only vet for so many years and we would have never had that, and it was just such an important thing to, I know, our family and all of our animals for so many years, and he's going to be gone, and I think it's a really big vacancy. I know we have another vet here in town, but it's going to be a big loss, so I just want to wish him the best of luck, and thank you, and that's all.
Good comment. Councilmember Cease?
Yes, I also want to welcome Jeanette because I am just thrilled to death that you will like Alaska because you've been here before. It's not like, oh, I don't want to know. So welcome. Glad you're joining our team. And I want to thank Maureen for bringing up, Sheehan for bringing up about the buses. And I hope we'll take care of that for you. And I want to congratulate also Liberty Miller, Colleen Kelly, and also the American Legion for the Poppy Day, and also Brenda for getting her diploma or certificate or something. And I don't want Norm's head to get any bigger, but I want to thank you for all the work that you did and being considerate and talking to the people and everything. No, I'm glad you're back. No, not that you're going to be out of here, because I really want her here, but now maybe you'll really get that harbor in shape.
Councilmember Osina?
I don't know how to top that.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say thank you to Liberty Miller and Colin Kelly for all their hard work, and of course the American Legion for their hard work also. Thank you to Bob and all those who make the combat fishing tournament possible. Jeanette, welcome. Good to see you in person. And Norm, good job. You know, get that big head. I don't know.
Thank you. Councilmember McClure?
Okay, well, what everyone said, welcome Jeanette, and Norm, you got us through a whole bunch of stuff this winter, like icy ramps and airports that weren't working right, and you know, it was amazing to have the communication, and with Stephen, and I'm assuming we'll just continue on in that vein, and that's a really good way to go. Dr. Hall, when I took Reggie out for his mani-pedi because I have a cat that I can't do the nails just a couple weeks ago, and he informed me he might be retiring, and I guess he didn't do it, but he said he was going to put a thing in the paper to say that he was going to come out as a cat lover because he has, if you don't know, his license plate is Dr. Dog. But secretly, he really loves cats, and I just wanted to let everyone know that Reggie and I will be missing him. He may have to do the nails, you know. Anyway, as the American Legion Memorial Day service is something I go to every year, and it's really a good thing to go to. One year, the smell fish plant was so bad we could barely stand it, and then they've moved it so you don't have to hear the train over, but it's really worth going to. It's very moving, and it's a way of, in your own way, honoring those who've fallen. And I have a lot of family out there at the cemetery and all of those cemeteries, so it's a good time for just remembrance. Speaking of history, Lee Pileski and I have decided that on June 5th, we're going to do a redux of the trail, the bike path history walk that we did a few years ago. It's National Trails Day on that Saturday. And so at 1 o'clock on June 5th, we're going to assemble down at the Sea Life Center and do maybe an hour-long walk on the bike path, just discussing the history of what had happened along the way. It's a pretty cool thing.
Cool.
Just to get everybody revved up for the Solstice Cemetery Tour at 10:30 on June 21st, and I'll be telling more about that. We missed it last year. We were there, but of course with COVID, we didn't have an audience. And then we're going to do another thing at Woodlawn, probably closer to Halloween, but somewhere along the line this summer, when we get the Mary Lowell headstone, we're going to have a dedicatory time out at Woodlawn for that, and also a bit of a mini tour of some more grave sites. We've got plans, so whenever that's happening, we'll get together with Liberty. And so history keeps going, but just you know, we need another cat-loving veterinarian in this town. That's all I gotta say.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Jeanette, welcome home. It's nice to have you here. When I came here 9 years ago as a seasonal employee, I never thought this would be my home. This is the only one place that I've stayed longer than where I was born and raised, and this has become my community and my family and my home. And that being said, thank you, Norm, so much for being there for us. I think Norm is the one person, and Stephen as well, but Norm even more so, you know, we trust Norm. Everyone trusts Norm, and he does a great job for us, and he's done a great job and took us through probably what will be in my lifetime the hardest thing that we've ever been through. And now moving forward, like Councilmember McClure through the tsunami, and this is where our time is to move forward and be stronger and grow as a community and come closer and participate and really grow this community to what we want it to be. The Seward Pride Alliance has planned in-person Pride for July 30th, 31st, and August 1st, so we will have in-person events. We have a welcome bonfire to dance party, to a barbecue, to a hike, all kinds of events on that weekend. So,
No, buddy.
Dog interlude.
There's another one. Oh my God.
I'm so sorry.
This is great for Dr. Hall.
I want a treat.
He's so cute.
Or not.
Please let the minutes reflect that we had a visitor.
What's his name again?
Tater.
Tater. He's so cute.
Come here, Tatery Tot.
Okay, so this goes in the annals of you know you live in a small town when. Vice Mayor, I'll let you complete your thought.
I don't think I can after that, but thank you everyone for their patience tonight.
Great, thank you. So I'll be 7 out of 7 and just really welcome Jeanette. We're so excited to have you. I think that you're catching the spirit that all good things are ahead and we're ready for some forward momentum and some really good things happening. Thank you to Norm. I can't say enough good things, so I'm not even going to start. And I do want to say that Stephen did a great job, both of you with heavy lifting. It was just phenomenal, and we very much appreciate it. Brenda, thanks for including updates on your travel and training. It's nice to know and have that feedback back. And then if we could which I think there's some of us that were on council before, they did set up a system for the smells with the lagoon. I know that Public Works Director has been very good about hearing about it and going out there, but let's make sure everyone's just aware of that, at least through the fixes with final repairs of that lagoon. And then just finally, I want to say congrats to all our graduates. Graduation was just lovely. It was rainy, but it was in person, and the parents were there, and the families were there, and the school did a great job with all those kids so that they could have that same experience. And I wanted to specifically say congratulations to our senior mom council member, Councilmember Casagrande. One down, 2 more to go. So just congrats on that, and great work. And great work to all the parents. And with that, I'm going to adjourn at 8:30.
Wow, 8:30.